proposals and the traffic regulation order associated with those. And I'm going to turn, first of all, to the officers to present that. I think, Hannah, that is you. So over to you, Hannah, to explain the proposals.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Hannah Clark. I'm the Transport Strategy Manager at Devon County Council, and I'll be running us through a quick presentation covering the bus service improvement plan proposals for the Exeter Central and Eastern corridors. So as a reminder, the proposals to be considered today are part of the capital schemes being implemented to deliver the Devon bus service improvement plan. This aims to grow bus patronage, facilitate a positive step change in bus provision, create a bus network that meets the needs of all users, and ensure the bus is considered equally alongside other modes of transport. An enhanced partnership has been formed, bringing together Devon County Council officers, the portfolio holder with responsibility for public transport, bus operators, rail operators, and the NHS. Devon received £8 million capital funding to deliver schemes that will help uplift the bus services across the county, with the Exeter Eastern and Central corridors being two of these focus areas. The Enhanced Partnership receive regular updates on these capital schemes at their quarterly meetings and have expressed their support for the proposals here today. So the Central and Eastern corridors consist of a number of different measures, including an extension to bus lane operating hours on 4 sections of bus lanes, shown here with the dotted pink sections. It also proposes to introduce pre-signals on Hereditary Road for buses approaching the Barrack Road junction and introducing a 2-lane advance on North Street. There's been good progress made to date, with a public consultation held in February and March earlier this year. Over 800 responses were received, and these informed the proposals that have been brought forward and secured Cabinet approval for the investment totalling £1.586 million across the 2 corridors. Traffic regulation orders required to enable the infrastructure improvements were advertised over September and October, resulting in the proposals brought to the committee today. It should be noted that the deadline for delivery of the BSIP schemes is March 2025. And before getting into the detail of the proposals, I wanted to highlight why these schemes are really important in delivering the aims of the BSIP. So these are really significant bus corridors, not just in Exeter, but in the county, with 60 buses an hour on the Central corridor and 18 buses an hour on the Eastern. This equates to 800,000 bus users a year on these corridors. And whilst they're important now, it's expected this will only increasingly become more relevant as the east of Exeter continues to grow, and we want to support people to make sustainable trips into the city centre and beyond. Importantly, the Central corridor has also recently been announced as a corridor which will receive electric buses in the future, transforming the experience of bus users along here. So the proposals, combined with technological improvements that have received Cabinet approval, will bring a saving of 48,000 hours per year for the many users that rely on these corridors. This represents good value for money, with an economic benefit of £2.15 million using the Department for Transport's value of time calculations. So a number of orders have been advertised and included in the report. At Livery Dole, there is a proposed net loss of parking of 6 spaces in order to accommodate the bus pre-signals. So the green section here shows new parking, with the red being the lost parking. At North Street, there are 3 parking spaces lost to accommodate the 2-lane advance. However, the car club space and ambulance-only parking is retained. And there are also 4 bus lane operating hours proposed to change. On Honiton Road and Pinhoe Road, it is proposed to have an extension to Monday to Saturday, 7 AM to 10 AM. The proposal for Hereditary 4 Street is an amendment following the consultation feedback and has been relaxed from 12 hours to extended peaks covering 7 AM to 10 AM and 4 PM to 7 PM Monday to Saturday. There were good levels of responses to the proposals highlighted here. The majority support the proposals for Hereditary Road Honiton Road and Pinhoe Road. And whilst 4th Street received over 300 objections, these concerns have been considered as part of the revised proposal brought to the committee today. It's also worth noting that we received a range of responses from organisations, including Stagecoach, Axe Valley Mini Travel, Country Bus, Dartline, Tally-Ho Coaches, Exeter Civic Society and Exeter Chamber of Commerce. An objection was also received from the Post Office with regards to the 4th Street 12-hour proposal. And we've therefore brought forward the following recommendations to the committee today, including the relaxation of the bus lane operating times on Hereditary 4th Street from 12 hours to Monday to Saturday peak times. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Hannah, for that presentation. We now move on to the public speakers on this item. We do have quite a few people listed to speak, so can I please ask you to speak as succinctly as possible and remind all the public speakers that we have heard your comments already made as part of the consultation, and ask you politely not to repeat things that have already been said and not to repeat what is points made by an earlier speaker. That would just help us to move through this process at a reasonable pace. I will call each one in turn. Please come forward and take a seat and use the microphones. So the first speaker I have on my list is John Burgoyne, the estate agent.
Good morning. I am John Burgoyne, owner and partner of Burgoyne's Estate Agents, which is situated on 4th Street, Hereditary, at the junction with Gordon's Place. I am speaking to you regarding the proposed changes to the bus lanes in 4th Street, Hereditary, and the proposed parking changes to North Street, Hereditary. You have been recommended to approve extending bus lane usage for Stagecoach by 16 more hours in a week, including the instigation of the same bus lanes on Saturdays, which currently don't exist. Also, to keep the co-car space in North Street for a company that is no longer trading, and reduce the paid parking spaces from 5 to 2. Hence my first question. Why is there a need for bus lanes on a Saturday? Where is the evidence that this is necessary when the use of buses by users is totally different on a Saturday? My second question is, why protect a space for a company that is no longer operating and reduce parking spaces which serve the businesses at North Street junction with 4th Street and the care home situated immediately adjacent to these spaces? I would like to ask the question, how many of the committee members here today have actually visited 4th Street, Hereditary, or North Street, Hereditary, or any of the other areas where there are proposed changes to our streets? Please raise your hands if you have visited a trader or spoken with a resident regarding this proposal. That's not many. The word that springs to mind is pretty woeful. How can you possibly make a decision on something so vitally important to us? The business and the residents vitally important to us, the business and the residents, and understand how we will be affected by longer bus lane times. Do you not think, when making decisions of such magnitude, that these should be informed decisions? No loading or unloading, preventing deliveries to businesses and residents, some with no other entrance than on 4th Street. Draymen delivering to the sellers of pubs, all situated on 4th Street. Customers unable to drop off service washes to the laundrette. Securicor unable to collect funds safely from the post office, and on it goes. We are a circular economy in Hereditary. We support one another. Since moving my business from the city centre in Hereditary in 2018, we have battled COVID, the enforcement of the LTNs, which incidentally cost my company a third of my profits from the previous year, the cost of living crisis, and now more pressure from a proposal that is not needed and will have no impact on bus times. Do not make these changes. They are not needed. Do not extend bus lane times. Do not remove parking spaces in North Street used by family, carers of the elderly, customers and deliveries.
That's your turn.
I'm just summing up. Consult with us, please talk with us. Ask of our opinions, and let us find a way forward where we can work together with you and others of differing views. Help us to trust you, respect us, and listen to us so we do not feel fear or a threat to our existence as business owners, employers, and taxpayers. Please know that this fear can be overwhelming to many of our independent shop owners and their employees.
Well, we now move on to Karen Jones from Thrifty Stylist.
Good morning. My name is Karen Jones and I own the Thrifty Stylist shop on North Street, Exeter. I am here today to request that you please reconsider the proposed changes to the North Street layout. I have lived and worked in Exeter for over 20 years. I opened my shop after being made redundant during the pandemic and used my military pension to fund it. From day one, the shop has been really well supported by the local community, from young mums on the school run to residents from the local assisted living community. Customers tell us daily what an asset we are to Exeter shopping. I would estimate 60% of my business is furniture sales. This requires loading and unloading. We also have regular deliveries by couriers. As my husband and I are solely responsible for delivering furniture to our customers in the local area, it would be impossible for us to continue to operate if the proposed plans for North Street were implemented. Customer accessibility will be impaired by the removal of the parking, and it's already causing serious concern with customers telling us they will no longer come to Exeter to shop if the parking is restricted. I am genuinely concerned for the viability of my business. If people are unable to park or wait to collect larger items, and if we are unable to park to load and unload deliveries. This also applies to the chemist and Sue Ryder charity shop, who I have observed have their deliveries via North Street. From my vantage point in the shop, I can absolutely say with conviction that there is rarely an issue with vehicles turning left into North Street from 4th Street. In fact, I have observed the queue of traffic occurs around 3 p.m. when 2 local schools end their day out of North Street to join 4th Street, which is on the opposite side of the road from the proposed plans. Buses move freely in both directions and traffic is rarely held up for more than a matter of seconds. I do not feel taking away the parking for such a short distance will have any beneficial effect on bus travel times or efficiency. Can I please request, if you feel you have to remove the parking, can you please compromise somewhat and install a loading bay as implemented in Magdalen Road, which will at least allow myself and the other businesses in the vicinity of North Street to accept deliveries and load orders. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Barnes from the Laundress.
Good morning. My name is Richard Barnes, and for the last 35 years, I have been the owner and operator of the laundrette at 92 4th Street, Exeter. The ability to park outside the laundrette is essential for its operation and could not operate without it. If the business were to close, I would not only lose my income, but also the £100,000 of capital equipment invested in the premises. But this is not just a business. It is an essential community facility. The business is split between those customers who drop off their washing to be done by my staff and those customers who prefer to do their own washing. In both cases, their ability to park close to the business is essential. It is a common perception that laundrettes are no longer viable or needed, for surely everybody has a washing machine. However, assuming that Exeter is no different to the national picture, There are 10% of households who do not own a washing machine and rely on laundrette facilities. These people are a complete cross-section of the population. They vary from elderly customers living in sheltered accommodation, which incidentally surrounds our business, to busy mums who are desperate to wash and dry their children's clothes, and many of the busy local hospital workers. Since the cost of living crisis fed by high prices of utilities, a new customer has emerged who prefers the peace of mind of prepaying for their washing rather than waiting for the dreaded utility bill. Contrary to popular belief, because of the speed and size of laundrette equipment, it can be cheaper to use this facility rather than doing it at home. Whether a duvet or a week's washing, the load to be transported bulky and heavy, and hence the need to stop and unload. The closest car park doesn't really cater for drop-off customers, with a minimum price of £2 for 2 hours, when all is needed is 15 minutes. It is also accessed by a steep set of stairs, often covered in wet leaves, and therefore dangerous. During COVID, laundrettes were designated an essential business and duly stayed open, much to the relief of those people who relied on them. I congratulate the committee on the decision to abandon the 12-hour bus lane proposal a week without parking but the present proposal does amount to 16 hours of extra parking and is ill-advised and unnecessary. Currently, the 7 to 8 slot time is used to drop off washing by people on their way to work, and I don't believe inhibits the traffic flow in any way. Where is the specific evidence that proves the need to include a bus lane on a Saturday? I don't believe the question was ever asked of the public.
Please, can you wind up?
I respectfully suggest that the existing bus lane and parking restrictions create the right balance between commuters and community and should remain unchanged.
Thank you. Mr. Chart. Oh, sorry, I've jumped one. Paul Jenner. Paul Jenner.
Going to speak out of lib, all right? Just a few notes. I'm a trader and a resident, which makes me quite, I think, unique. There might be one or two others here, but I've got a house on 4th Street, and I've also got a shop, the Spanish shop, further up. And every day I walk up between the two, so I know the street very well. Also, I was born in Mowbray House, so I'm actually from Hevertree, and I lived there. I was brought up there, apart from going abroad for many years, but basically, yeah, that's where I'm from. I think that restricting the or increasing the bus lane will actually affect many businesses, and some will have to close down. It's already been terrible. We've had all the problems that we've heard about earlier. We also had Brexit, which affected us because we cannot import like we used to, and it's been a terrible time the last few years. We've survived until now, and that's been wonderful, but you know, I don't know whether we could survive very much longer if you increase the bus lanes. What about the person who wants a fridge freezer delivered to their house? What are they going to do? That means the company would have to deliver it before 7, well, you know, before this. It's going to be a lot more difficult to get deliveries into houses as well. I also believe that the street would be more congested with cars because you've only then got the one lane for the cars, and actually I think we get a lot more traffic jams going further back. It's already like a motorway. It's terrible. I would actually make a tunnel under there and put all the traffic under, but that's my opinion, right? But it's like a motorway, and Hevertree's been ruined because of the cars and the traffic. It needs to be changed. I did some of the counting on my own about the buses, and it was about, I did several hours, about 14 or 15 buses an hour, and a lot of them were almost empty. You know, there was one or two that were full, but most of them were either had very few people on them, or they were empty. And I think what should be done, rather than this bus lane business, is to start thinking how you can improve the public transport system, make it much cheaper, much more regular, so that people actually use it. Because in other countries, I tell you, I've lived in Spain, They're well ahead of us now in all these things. And I don't know what's going on. I think that you need to think about, people would use the buses much more if they were cheaper and if they're more regular. If you've got to hang around for half an hour for a bus, you don't want to reuse it. You're more likely to jump in a car. I think the infrastructure is also, in this country, we haven't spent any money on infrastructure for years. We're building all these houses and we need to start thinking about infrastructure, how we can improve it, putting underpasses under the roundabouts, making another crossing of the X, things like this. But it's not thought of, oh, we haven't got the money. We're supposed to be one of the richest countries in the world. I don't know where all the money's going, you know, but really we need to start thinking these more serious, more broader plans. And just one more thing before I finish. The pavement this is to do with, to do with you as well. The pavement in Hevertree is absolutely awful. I've fallen over 4 times. You can see I use a stick. I've spoken to other people. They've also fallen over. It's really dangerous. That needs to be looked into. Last year, you relayed the road there. It didn't need relaying. There's no potholes. It was completely all right. You spent loads of money. What you should have done is improve the pavement. One of these days, someone's going to fall over, break their neck, and sue you for millions of pounds.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very
Janet.
much.
Can I now call Neil Chart from the Gun and Sports Shop?
Good morning. Firstly, I would like to thank the committee for the opportunity to speak at this meeting, and also thank DCC for amending the proposed bus lane times. I'm here to represent my family business, the Gun and Sports Shop, which has traded in Hevertree for over 55 years. And I myself have been a local resident for over 30 years. The original proposal of a 12-hour bus lane would have been hugely detrimental, not only to the businesses on Fore Street, but also the residents. There's very few, if any, properties on the south side of Fore Street have any rear access for loading and unloading. Loading and parking restrictions have increased over the years, making trading very difficult. Whilst I understand the need for improvements to the bus service, hopefully with the bus lane times as proposed and implementing some of my suggestions, we can find a compromise that suits all parties. With the nature of goods we sell, we've been advised by the police to be vigilant when opening and closing the shop, and also when our customers are loading or unloading, for obvious reasons, it is beneficial to be as close to the entrance as possible. One of the comments we hear the most from new customers in our shop is I've driven past lots of times but haven't stopped as I couldn't see anywhere to park. As the majority of our customers travel to get to us, once in the area, they always use other businesses like the post office and cafes, etc., and others in the city. As we're going to lose some of the parking spaces from Fore Street and North Street, could I make some suggestions for you to consider when making the changes? Firstly, better signage for the shoppers' car park in Gordon's Place. The current signage for this is not obvious. It's one small sign across the street, 30 feet in the air, which is not obviously in your eye line when driving. Revision of parking charges currently in the car park, £2 for 2 hours and £3 for a maximum stay. If the charges were £1.50 per hour with a maximum stay of 2 hours, this would help free up spaces and potentially increasing revenue for the council. Secondly, where the parking spaces in North Street are going to be removed, perhaps a loading bay could be provided between the hours of 10 and 4 to run concurrently with the proposed bus lane times. Also, to relocate the co-car space, which I know may be introduced back into the future, up into the north side of Fore Street, where there's also provision and space for possibly introducing an electric charging point. Thirdly, as a local resident, the addition of a turn right filter from North Street into Fore Street when the pedestrian crossing is active would give up to 20 to 25 seconds of extra time for more vehicles, including buses, to get through the lights in every cycle. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I call Suzanne Selly from the post office, please?
Morning, councillors. My name is Suzanne Selly and I've been the postmistress for Hevertree Post Office for over 10 years now. In a week, approximately, I have between 1,500 to 2,000 customer sessions a week. The majority of these are elderly who rely on us to provide them with lifeline services that is essential to keep them living independently. Transactions such as banking, which is an essential service for them, avoiding long trips into the city centre. As there are no banks in Hevertree now, the banking service we provide are not only paramount to the elderly population, but the rest of the general public that need to use these essential services. Being a larger branch, we have a large range of facilities and services to offer to the general public. These services include many over-the-counter postal services. Royal Mail are our largest courier, but we also cover and send many parcels for Amazon, Parcel Force, DPD, and recently Every. These large range of services means the couriers attend the post office around 8 to 10 times per day throughout the day via the front entrance to the shop. With these couriers providing a collection and drop off the service, the timings vary throughout the day. The shop does not have any rear access as it is underground. The bus lane extension would not only stop the access point for the said couriers, but also may implicate their contract with my branch due to the further restrictions of times and location. These parcel services are essential in my business, creating revenue I need to survive. Not only will the bus lane extension affect my contracts, it will have major implications on the invaluable customers that I can provide services to. With the working population finishing work later, I provide a late collection for postage around 4:50 p.m. This is invaluable, especially to the working population and the staff from the RD&E, who contribute greatly to my footfall. Additionally, we are one of the only branches in Exeter who provide services such as DBS checks, driving licence, SIA licences and passport services. If we reduce footfall with the proposed bus lane, customers will not be able to park conveniently and will have to pay £2 for parking for a 10 to 20-minute transaction. This will defer the business elsewhere to other branches where parking is more convenient or seek online transactions implicating my business. So I ask on the behalf of myself and other businesses in Hevertree to reject the proposed bus lane extension. I ask you to reconsider what measures can be introduced that may help us as traders and the community. Instead of reducing the essential services we should be providing to the general public. I believe if the bus lane is in effect, Hevertree will become a ghost town. Thank you.
Thank you. Neil Martin, please.
Good morning to you all, and thank you for having me back again. I wanted to bring up one quick point actually on Hannah's presentation in the officers' reports. I've been to lots of the welcome sessions and the drop-ins, and what was continually put forward was the fact that we could save 4 minutes on this bus journey term. Under Freedom of Information Act that came back, nobody knows the answer. In fact, I asked, please specifically calculations for the bus lane journey terms on the short bus lane, approximately 54 metres on Hevertree 4th Street. Devon County Council does not hold this information. There's an 85-page report, and unless everybody around this table has read that report, you do not have all the answers. I shall now go back to the main bit. To the committee members of Exeter Hattock, this morning I read this letter on behalf of the Hevertree Brewery PLC from the Trade Director, Terry Wheatley. They are objecting to the NL3. Hevertree Brewery are the freehold owners of the Horse and Groom and Royal Oak. The brewery has been made aware of proposals to alter 4th Street to include the extension of the bus lane, which includes the NL3 zone, virtually the whole length of 4th Street on both sides. This would make it virtually impossible for businesses to trade. We understand that today's committee will be considering an amendment allowing deliveries potentially to offload to the hours of 10 AM to 4 PM, but we still ask this committee to reconsider the following. 4th Street has been a commercial business hub for decades, not only to the community of Hevertree, but to Watford, Ladysmith, Mount Pleasant and the hospital. Terry has experience working as being the landlord at the Ship and Pelican for over 4 years. He knows how difficult the deliveries are. We understand how much busier traffic has become on 4th Street, but it's one of the most important routes in and out of our ever-expanding city. Traders, with the support of their suppliers, have managed their deliveries very well by requesting early morning slots outside of busy commuter times. Most suppliers try to encourage delivery in the mornings, as even though 4th Street wakes up at 8 o'clock, it's normally still relatively quiet. For around 95% of traders, there's no other places for their suppliers to park. 1 or 2 of them have dedicated spaces to businesses, but most suppliers have to use 4th Street as a loading bay. 4th Street offers half-an-hour waiting zones. Most suppliers can offload and be gone within that time. Although not perfect, it has the support of traders and the suppliers, and it works. Yes, it has its busy times, and traffic may move slowly, but it still does move along and generally never comes to a standstill. Delivery from 7 PM to 7 AM would not work, and if this committee were minded to support such a scheme, we would urge them to consider the ramifications of potential noise issues and damage to the mental health of all the residents that live along 4th Street in their own houses and flats. So in summary, we understand this council's commitment to improving public services within the city, but there are far better ways for it to spend its money rather than the proposed alterations to 4th Street, which, if not thought through properly, will destroy the very street that remains one of the few still surviving, which offers a commercial community hub outside of the main city centre to its residents and workforce nearby. Kind regards, Terry Wheatley.
Thank you. Now, Sue Simmons.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to say a few words. You will all, as county councillors, be aware of the need for dedication in your role to represent your division. It is most likely that those who don't stand for this type of public role have absolutely no idea of the hours spent in dealing with local issues. You will all no doubt agree that part of your role is engagement with the community, who have trusted you with their support at the ballot box. You will be very aware that the county division of Hevertree and Whipton has been the centre point for 2 huge schemes, namely the controversial LTN and now the current bus service improvement plan proposal for 4th Street, Hevertree, which, especially in its original format, placed at risk the future viability of local shops, which are so vital to a vibrant and flourishing community. It is therefore a tragedy that a division has gone through these testing times with no representation from its elected county councillor. In fact, some have said that the division has been subject to these controversial schemes, which have divided the community because it has lacked even the minimal level of representation at county level. My comments today are aimed more on the current proposal relating to the extension of the bus lane restrictions, etc. in Hevertree, because it's an agenda item for this meeting and is a current topic. Nevertheless, the deficit of the representation in our division has applied for well over 2 years. It is necessary to stress that we refer to local representation. We are not seeking someone who necessarily agrees with our opinions and who will support all our requests. This would be impossible as there are diverse views on most subjects, but rather a willingness to engage, to communicate, listen, understand our concerns and not ignore the local community with the extent it feels disregard and has been treated with disdain. Some of you may be thinking, yet again, we have to sit through more representatives at the Hattock meeting from the moaning mob in Hevertree Whipton, complaining again about some proposals on a Hattock agenda. When will they go away? One of the reasons why members of our local community so regularly overcome their nerves to reluctantly speak on these occasions is simply because no one else at county level is speaking for them or listening to them. Therefore, it's left to the community itself to speak up for itself. If we accept that your roles of members involves engagement with all stakeholders in your division, it is therefore remarkable that during this whole bus lane consultation, and indeed that of the LTN, our community has been unrepresented. Please listen to the people who voted you in. Please don't let us wait until May 25 before we are represented at DC level. The community needs somebody now. Hevertree 4th Street is the heart of a thriving community. Please don't let it decline.
Thank you. Next speaker is Edward Pickering.
So yesterday, the 29th United Nations Climate Change Conference started. The Prime Minister is there today to announce ambitious and stringent new climate goals for the UK. So what's this got to do with bus lanes in Hevertree? Very good time to think global, act local. There are urgent climate and health emergencies in the UK. Exeter is still gridlocked and Hattock's progress on sorting this is very, very slow. This is a bus service improvement plan, but from reading it, I'm struggling to see the improvement. Instead of giving everyone the 12-hour bus lane through Hevertree that might finally show that you're serious about public transport, you're going to vote on hours that are barely different to what we currently have. You're not even bothered to extend the possibility of better buses to school children, because the suggestion now is to start the afternoon operation time at 4 p.m. Giving priority to buses at school leaving time would facilitate the movement of young people and reduce school run traffic. Not for the first time, you're completely ignoring the needs and voices of young people. A 12-hour bus lane will help the most disadvantaged. According to the Health Foundation, the poorest households are more than 4 times as likely to have no access to a car as the wealthiest. You're telling the poorest in our society they matter less than those who are privileged enough to have a car. Older people and disabled people are more likely to use buses. Data from the Bus Open Data Service shows that buses through 4th Street are slow between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. However, they are consistently faster when the bus lane operates and consistently delayed outside those times. 4th Street needs a 12-hour bus lane with exemptions for deliveries and loading. Allow deliveries between 10 and 2, but no parking by private cars for the duration. Allowing parking by private vehicles in bus lanes will stop the bus lane working. The transformative urban mobility initiative say that car lanes move 1,500 passengers an hour. Bus lanes move 9,000 passengers an hour. You've got a choice here between 2 priorities, one of which is 6 times more efficient than the other, but only if you give it space to do so. And remember that you're also designing a transport system for Exeter's future, and you're nowhere near hitting the targets of your own official published transport strategy. Exeter's population is growing, and if you don't finally get serious about modal shift away from cars and towards public transport and active travel, our pollution, congestion and health issues will get worse. We desperately need a joined-up system which prioritises public transport and active travel and radical changes, not insignificant tweaks. You need to show courage, you need to show leadership, you need to show ambition.
Can you wind up, please?
Yeah, I'm at 2 minutes 45. You've left an information and leadership vacuum, and so reactionary voices, bad stats, misinformation and disinformation are rushing in to fill the space. Your job, especially the majority Exeter Labour Party, is to implement progressive policies that benefit society. Councillors of Exeter Hattock, please move the city forward. Don't leave it stuck in the traffic jam.
Thank you. Can I ask Mandy Darling to come forward?
Thank you, members, for receiving me today at your Hattock committee. My name is Mandy Darling and I'm a Community Engagement Officer for Devon Insight. I'm registered severely visually impaired. I've been visually impaired since my mid-teens, and I'm here today with my guide dog Pepsi, who's my 4th guide dog. Devon Insight, formerly the Devon County Association for the Blind, provides services to people across Devon who are blind and partially sighted. There are 51,000 people living in Devon with some sort of sight loss, and I'll repeat that, 51,000. And Devon Insight provides advice and guidance to those on this journey, although obviously not all of them are severely sight impaired. Many of you here will have the luxury of being able to drive a car, the independence that gives to go out and about and get where you want. Those with a visual impairment have total reliance on public transport to get to their destinations, whether it be hospital appointments, shopping, socialising, or the workplace. And I say that again, total reliance. Investment in our public transport systems is vital going forward, and we have already
audio, passenger audio, voice announcements on our buses. We have priority seating, and we also have bus driver disability awareness training. And this, along with the bus corridors and bus only areas, will give people with disabilities and visual impairments greater confidence to go out and about, greater well-being and greater good mental health. Devon Insight has worked with bus drivers to provide, in conjunction with Devon County Council, a bus driver awareness training scheme, which has been rolled out and benefits the drivers and those who are disabled to have a complete awareness. And this all brings together Devon Insight strategy to make Devon a sight loss friendly place. To have a complete accessible transport system, which is a vital asset to Exeter, all these projects need to work together. And I'm going to say now from a visually impaired person's point of view, and I'd like you to put yourself in that position just for one moment. I'd like you to close your eyes. I'd like you to imagine that your guide dog has guided you to a bus stop, and you're stood at the bus stop and you know the bus is due, but it doesn't come, and you wait and you wait and you wait. And then somebody says to you, oh, the bus is gone. It couldn't get into the stop because a car was parked there. It's very sad, very disheartening, and doesn't bode for accessibility. Thank you very much, members, for listening to me and the charity I represent.
Thank you. Can I ask Peter Nichol now to come forward on behalf of the Exeter and District Bus User Group?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Most of you know what it is to be a bus user in Exeter. On a good day, it's fine. On a bad day, it can be a nightmare. Many people put up with this. Many have no choice. But many more have given up on the bus and take to their cars, thereby making things worse, because congestion is the biggest single problem for the bus and cause of unreliability, exacerbated by the stream of roadworks we've suffered recently. That's how things are, but it's dysfunctional. It shouldn't be like that. Exeter needs a well-functioning, reliable bus service, and that needs buses not to be clogged in traffic. With bus priority, buses would keep better time, be more reliable, more trusted, more people would use them. The classic virtuous circle. Not only bus travel, but I believe the whole transport system would be improved. Road transport is a huge contributor to Devon's carbon emissions and the most reluctant to change. I don't blame people for being reluctant to give up their cars. You leave when you choose, in your own space, with your own comforts. Of course, it's what people will do. But it has to change, or our roads become ever more dysfunctional. It's very difficult to persuade people out of their cars. It needs two crucial measures: for buses to be faster, visibly faster than cars, and for buses to be cheaper. Then people start to think. That's why bus priority is so important, not only bus lanes, but at intersections and through roadworks. So please, members of this committee, be brave in the face of opposition. Keep in your minds a bus service that works consistently well. Believe in that vision. But bus priority is central to that vision. So please vote for bus priority all these measures today, and not just today, but at every opportunity. Be brave, be bold, because we need to do this. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to call on Peter Knight, who's Managing Director, I think it is, Peter, of Stagecoach Southwest, and Peter's online. So Peter, over to you. You've got up to 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, and good morning, councillors. As kindly been introduced, I'm the Managing Director of Stagecoach Southwest, but I'm also speaking on behalf of all bus operators in the Devon Bus Enhanced Partnership. I wanted to formally place on record our views around the traffic regulation order consultation process in relation to the bus service improvement plan schemes that will be considered by the committee today. And I'd like to point out that bus services are the lifeblood of the local economy, connecting people to the places and people that they need to get to the most. They're often the only form of transport for some households, often the most disadvantaged in society, and play the key for reducing congestion and the associated poor air quality that comes with it. Buses are the most important element in the Exeter and wider Devon public transport ecosystem. And as a business, we carry approximately 11.5 million people in the greater Exeter area annually. And our single greatest challenge is being able to operate our services reliably in often congested keyed corridors into and out of Exeter. And these include Heavy Road and Pinhoe Road, the areas that are under consideration today. Now is the time to show the ambition to improve bus services, both for the residents of Exeter and more widely in Devon. And over 2 million annual passenger journeys depend on reliable and predictable road conditions on the Heavy Road section of the highway network, and 750,000 on Pinhoe Road, connecting bus users, as I've said already, to the people and places that they need to get to the most, including essential employment, healthcare and education opportunities, as well as contributing to the economic vibrancy of the wider Exeter city region. Providing a reliable and punctual bus service in Exeter is one of our biggest challenges with the current traffic congestion pinch points, and these measures will go a long way to helping address this challenge. With improved and consistent journey times, this will allow us to invest in the Exeter bus network, including frequency enhancements and frequency investments, the key themes our stakeholders and customers tell us that they want to see. Therefore, we support the measures to extend operating hours of existing bus lanes. Ideally, we would have liked this to have been a 12-hour time window on 4th Street in Heavy, as it would have delivered the maximum benefit. However, we recognise that there needs to be a solution that works for all stakeholders, and most importantly, the local community and their residences and businesses. We are therefore pleased that an alternative proposal for extended peak hour operation has been reached as a recommendation to this committee, as it demonstrates a balance between wanting to improve current provision and therefore deliver benefits at the peak hours when they are most needed, but also recognises that access to constrained road space and infrastructure is a balance between many parties and stakeholders. It is time to recognise the challenges that congestion on key corridors has on operating a reliable and punctual bus service, both for the city and wider community. There are 2 million passenger journeys on Heavy Road alone that depend on reliable and punctual operation of our services, and a further 750,000 on Pinhoe Road, as I've already outlined. We're now calling for actions to match the ambition for better and more reliable bus services that we know all stakeholders in the city have, and to adopt this innovative and thoughtful package of measures.
Peter, that is 3 minutes.
Thank you. That's all I want to say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes our speaking by members of the public. I now have 4 councillors, elected representatives, who have also requested to speak, and under the council's constitution, they're allowed to speak for 5 minutes each. So I'll call the first of those, which is Councillor Andrea Davis, who's a cabinet member on Devon County Council, and Andrea, perhaps you would make your remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to reassure you I won't be here for 5 minutes because we are all busy people, as many speakers have already alluded to. So to make it clear to those that don't know me, I am the Cabinet Member for Climate Change, Environment and Transport at Devon County Council. And you've just one item to consider today, members, that's the traffic regulation orders, the responses to which you've got in front of you. The recent consultation was well supported, I thought, by many people. So following that consultation, we have reduced it to 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. as many people have already said. Now, by bringing all these into line across all these various areas, it makes it easier for highway users to know when the bus lanes are in operation. And I'm a transport user of many modes myself, and I have to say I find bus lanes extremely confusing when I'm driving. So I do find it will be better for all of us if they are all the same. The report clearly sets out the reasons for the bus lanes, with users needing to get to time-sensitive appointments. Now, that could be health, education, or indeed employment. Obviously, there's also leisure travel, but it is the time-sensitive ones I think we need to recall why people get so upset when buses are delayed. And that brings me on to the most complaints I get about buses in Exeter. And indeed, many of you in the room have contacted me about this. And that is about reliability and punctuality, which Peter has just alluded to. Exeter City Council's ambitious plans for growth mean that public transport is going to have an increasing role in providing transport around the city. Unless we can, with the City Council, residents and businesses, encourage bus use, the congestion will be stifling to any growth plans that you have. It will make the city less attractive for residents and visitors and reduce air quality. Now, while I can and will continue to look for ways to improve bus reliability for users who often have no other transport choices, today it's you that needs to show the leadership, not me, you, the members of this committee. You can make a difference today, and I'm urging you to use your vote wisely. Thank you.
Thank you. I've now got 3 councillors from Exeter City Council that have asked to speak. So first of those is Councillor Liz Pole. Councillor Pole, if you would come forward, thank you.
Chair, would you mind if I distribute a map to the members?
I would. I'm afraid.
You would mind?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and officers, for allowing me to speak today. I addressed this HATOC committee in October to ask officers to assess things related to shopping in Hevertree that are of great importance to many people in the ward I represent of Mincing Lake and Whipton. Firstly, what assessment of footfall has been made in Hevertree's 4 Street? Has a survey of local shoppers been conducted? What postcode have they come from? How do they get here? How much do they spend? Which shops do they use? How often do they visit Hevertree? Are they also using the health centre, dentist or hospital during the same visit? Secondly, I asked about residents on buses from Beacon Heath and Whipton who report that they have to change buses in the city centre to reach destinations in Hevertree. What assessment has been made of the demand for a bus route from Beacon Heath and Whipton to serve the shops in Hevertree, the health centre, the hospital and other nearby workplaces? As yet, I've not received an answer from the officers, but I will now add thirdly, what assessment has been made of movements of parked cars and vans on Hevertree 4 Street to establish the facts? Are they sitting for hours a day, clogging up the traffic in the bus lane and pointlessly causing the traffic and the cyclists to jostle and swerve for place? Or are they making a healthy contribution to what is known as footfall, the local circular economy of Hevertree and its significant implications for the prosperity and local amenity of the residents of Hevertree? If the latter, could a feasibility and cost-benefit assessment be made of subsidising alternative parking provision, for example at Gordon Place or at other locations that would continue to support trade? Why do these assessments matter to the people of Mincing Lake and Whipton? One reason is that Whipton and Beacon Heath are largely populated by current and retired key workers. Collective working lifetimes of often hard manual labour are manifested in high levels of multi-morbidity, as well as multiple indices of deprivation. Many of our residents report travelling several times a week to appointments at the health centre and the hospitals in Hevertree, and keep their travel efficient by using the local shops. Another is that the parish of Hevertree has encompassed the whole of Mincing Lake and Whipton since Tudor times, and most likely beyond that to the laws of King Alfred. The beating of the bound ceremony historically involved raising a boy by the ankles and bouncing his head on the boundary stones around the parish's 20-mile perimeter. The roads and the E3 cycle route that run from Beacon Heath to Whipton and Whipton to Hevertree represent the ancient routes that have always connected Hevertree past its Bartons and its village in Whipton to its rural hinterland at Beacon Heath. Residents overwhelmingly support the vision of better and faster bus journeys to places they want to go. Now, will this Conservative-run Devon County Council please commit to taking up the new Labour government's Better Buses legislation? Please, will this Conservative-run local traffic authority commit to working with Exeter City Council to take the strategic control of Exeter's bus routes? And please, will they give residents in Beacon Heath and Whipton the modal shift opportunity they would need to travel by bus to the shops, post office, hospital, health centre and amenities they frequent at their ancient local parish centre in Hevertree? Thank you very much.
Chair, could I ask for a point of order, please?
Yes.
Since I arrived, I've been handed various bits of paper and reports both against and for these proposals. I see no reason why Councillor Poe's map shouldn't be distributed to the committee as well.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Pole, I was going to suggest you leave those documents for members to take as they wish. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I have been presented with arguments both for and against the proposed recommendations. However, I would suggest that the recommendations need clarity before you vote, especially when looking at 4th Street. No waiting and no loading between Monday to Saturday, 7 AM and 7 PM. Schedule 3.075. The RTO relating to 1D, 5B, 4th Street, amending the time of the bus lane, I quote, "The proposed no loading restrictions would match these timings with the existing restrictions remaining between these times, subject to the possible relocation of the loading bay." Can you confirm that the no loading restrictions will match fairly throughout 4th Street and North Street, or apply within the bus lane? No drawings have been presented to Hattock to illustrate the removal of all the loading areas from 4th Street. So what will this scenario look like for our businesses and residents? This clarity is needed because the conversations that I have been having in Hevertree reveal that the nuanced dynamics of the 4th Street are missing. The report states that Exeter City councillors were informed, and yet I find no record of this in the Transport Working Group minutes. In September, Devon County Council presented this plan to that committee, who were to address concerns to the Devon County Councillor. No Hevertree councillors are on that committee. I know my fellow ward councillors share my ongoing frustration
at having to step into the vacuum left by Councillor Barnes's absence. Without an elected representative actively working in Hevitree, I suspect this plan was developed without fully addressing the specific needs required for Hevitree to function effectively. I would go as far to say Devon County Council has created a Hevitree bypass, or worse, a London red route of no stopping and no shopping. The impact assessment contains only 5 sentences making assumptions about businesses, which in reality are irrelevant to our independent traders. Are a few seconds saved on this stretch of road worth the risk to their sustainability? Hevitree is a village built around our traders, who have survived so much and adapted to the urban ebb and flow. However, threatening their sustainability when this report is about addressing carbon emissions via modal shift is an oxymoron. If Hevitree loses our post office or launderette, we will be forced to drive to the nearest one, and that won't help residents, the remaining businesses, or the environment. The residents of Fore Street are not mentioned in the impact assessment, and it is this eclectic community that will suffer the most. Why is there no safety audit? Did you know that their homes have no rear access? Do you know that the pavement is about 70 centimetres in places and a very low curb? Buses and HGVs wing mirrors hang over the pavement. You also have to step into the bus lane to move around fellow pedestrians. Were living options or RNIB consulted about Hevitree? Where will our blue badge holders park, and how will they access vital services in Hevitree if they have mobility issues? Residents understand this, yet the report fails to mention these consequences. Hattock, you need to ask, where is Hevitree in all these decisions? I am focused on Hevitree and our fragile corridor, which cannot escape its limitations. Most residents are served by the RNS service, which no longer uses this stretch of road. However, this report is clearly about East Devon's rapid growth. Devon County Council states, the wider travel to work area continues to grow with thousands of new homes planned. It will be critical for these corridors to offer convenient and attractive access for buses into the city centre, whilst ignoring Hevitree completely. LTN 1/24 bus users priority paper is clear. Engagement, particularly local residents and businesses, is required. While sending out a flyer was helpful, did it highlight the potential unintended consequences? This is a time for community-led initiatives, and as an elected member for Hevitree, I hope you will listen. If you believe changes are needed, such as loading bays or free Exeter City parking or reasonable adjustments for those with disabilities, you will need to reject these recommendations, and a request that Devon County Council planners return with a more inclusive and optimistic plan, which has unanimous support for our businesses, their suppliers, customers, and the residents of Fore Street. Chair, I would like to request that my main points are minuted, please, and that my questions are answered by email. Thank you.
Thank you. The final speaker is Councillor James Banyard. Thank you, James. That's much appreciated. So that concludes the public speaking on this item. We will now be moving forward to debate. But before we do so, can I just check with members whether anyone requires a short break? Yeah. Then we'll just call a halt for 3 or 4 minutes if we can, please. Right, members, can we pick up again? So we are now coming to questions and debate from members of the Highways and Traffic Orders Committee on the item that we have before us. We have before us the officers' report, and that includes a set of recommendations. Before we move into questions and debate, can I ask if there is a formal mover and seconder for those recommendations so that we have something on the table to discuss?
I'm happy to move the officers' recommendations.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please? Just to be clear, the officers are here to answer questions raised by the members of this committee. I'm aware that the public speakers asked quite a few questions in their statements. Officers are not obliged to answer those questions. They can be put as formal requests for information by the usual channels. If members wish to raise any of those points for an answer in the course of debate, they will do so. But I assure members of the public that all their comments and questions were heard and will be taken into account by members during the debate and in discussion. So to move on to questions now, I'm going to use my prerogative as the local member for a part of this route. I am the local member for the area that goes from Barrack Road down towards the Paris Street roundabout that is covered by one aspect of the Heavy corridor that is under consideration. We heard a lot of speakers from the other parts of that corridor, which is where the shop's located, but unfortunately, the person who wished to speak for my section has been unable to do so this morning, and I feel obliged to raise the concerns from residents in Midway Terrace who will be impacted by the loss of 6 parking spaces, and to express some concern about that loss of parking space, and to ask as a question what would be the implications for the proposals for the turn right into Barrack Road if that section of the scheme were not to proceed, and instead there was simply a tweaking of the traffic lights to facilitate bus priority going right. So perhaps officers would pick that up at a later point. And then I would also like to ask about the existing bus lane by the shops. There has been some comment in correspondence about cars parking there and in impacting the movement of buses during the bus lane operation. I understand that Devon has now been granted powers for enforcement of moving traffic offences, and I would ask whether it is on officers' to-do list for that particular bus lane to have camera enforcement to improve the movement of buses during bus lane operation. And then finally, the one point I wanted to pick up from those raised by public speakers this morning was in North Street, I believe it is, concerns about loading and unloading. I wonder if officers could perhaps clarify to the committee whether people requiring access to the furniture shop or other premises there have heavy loads, what will their opportunity be for loading and unloading? Perhaps you can clarify that. Officers, I don't know if you would prefer to gather up several questions or take one at a time.
We'll have to take them after each member's spoken if that's easiest. I'll actually hand over to James, who will be able to answer those questions that you've raised.
I can't answer the first one, but I can answer the second two. In terms of the enforcement for moving track offences, the council doesn't yet have powers. I believe it is being considered by Parliament sort of as we speak, and the intention is by the time we've got the powers and procured the cameras, the intention is that we would begin camera enforcement in next year. And 4th Street Heavitree is one of the sites that was identified as part of the first tranche to progress. Regarding North Street, obviously there are no changes to loading restrictions in North Street. Vehicles, because it is just yellow lines, loading can be permitted on the yellow lines in North Street. The only changes is obviously shortening of the parking bays and extension of the yellow lines opposite the businesses there. And obviously loading is permitted on the yellow lines. Obviously it goes without saying that drivers should pay attention and be aware of the traffic around that, but loading is still permitted and unchanged on North Street.
As for your first question, Chair, with regards to the pre-signals near Midway Terrace, unfortunately we would not be able to deliver the pre-signals without that loss of parking, because there has to be a realignment of the traffic lanes there. We have tried to mitigate that loss of parking by introducing the new parking spaces to the east of there, but I appreciate there's a residual 6 space lost as a result of that. But without the parking loss, we can't deliver the pre-signals.
Thank you. So just to clarify, the impact on those particular residents will be that they would no longer be able to park near them or adjacent to their homes. They have to cross over Heavitree Road to access residence parking in Grendon Road.
Or utilise the new spaces that are being introduced, yes.
Chair, sorry, I can just add a bit extra to that one. I have been monitoring the parking in the area, and obviously quite often this has been overnight when residents' demand obviously has been highest, and there has obviously generally been about 4 or 5 spaces unused on Heavitree Road itself, and there is evidence also of permit holders using Grendon Road where there is a lot more capacity on the opposite side. So
thank you, that's helpful. Right, I've got Councillor Hannaford, if you wish to go first, and then Councillor Bialik.
Thank you, Chair. Do you want me to take my questions separately as we go along, or do you want to do a batch?
If you could do a batch, thanks.
That's fine. My first question is in regard to the business engagement event. Can we have some clarification on which businesses, particularly in Heavitree, participated in that event and the numbers, and so we can get a feeling of actually how that went, because obviously there's been seems to be a disconnect this morning with that business community and businesses generally. My second question is a wider point. I still feel we're not really sure what we're approving today in terms of loading restrictions and how it sits with the businesses. There are some maps in here, but then they're not really very extensive in terms of how it will affect particularly the businesses that you've alluded to, Chair, such as the furniture shop, for example, which needs some sort of facility, which you've touched upon. So my second point is broadly, what are we actually being asked to approve today? Because I don't think that's clear. There have been various amendments, different suggestions, different maps, but I'm not sure what it will actually look like. My third question is, has Jack Simpson House been consulted? That's a key local service and facility in the area. I don't see it really touched upon in the reports or anything that we've had back, or even in some of the representations we've had today. And I think that's very important. We had the same situation down in Carrick Street recently with Carousel Court, which is a similar facility, which objected strongly to these proposals because obviously they need to have medical assistants, carers, etc., coming in, and that can be quite a large footfall for that sort of facility. And fourthly, Chair, can I ask, will the historic lamp in the area be moved if the junction is extended? I mean, clearly, we are a historic Roman city. We don't want to lose historic street furniture. It's part of the character of the area. So can we have some clarification on that? Because I don't think that will that has been adequately covered. And knowing Exeter fairly well after all these years, I can imagine if that lamp is removed and not replaced, or something terrible happens to it, there will not be a happy parish of Hevertree. Thank you.
There'll be no changes to the historic lamp. First of all, we're not proposing to change that. With regards to Jack Simpson House, we did have one resident respond to the consultation for the TROs. We didn't have anything from Jack Simpson House directly, although obviously anyone could have responded to that consultation. They would have been included in the letter drop as they're within that area. We undertook a review as officers of the businesses, particularly along 4th Street, looking at their opening hours to assess what the impact on those businesses would be as a result of the proposed extended peaks. On average, this would be an impact across the week of 4 extra hours within the business operating times where the bus lane is operational. So that's Monday to Saturday. So we felt that was a minimal impact on the businesses that are along that stretch. With regards to the business engagement event, that would have been part of the public consultation, which was held earlier in the year. That has got a public consultation report, which is now available online. So all of the responses and the sort of data related to that public consultation is available for anyone to view.
Thank you. Councillor Bialik.
Thank you, Chair. For those who watch me, I normally wait and see which way the wind is prevailing, but I think it's so important to let everybody know my thoughts at this early stage. Now, Chair, a little bit of guidance from you. You've moved and had seconded the recommendations, so those are the recommendations before us. So therefore, it can be amended, but clearly there could be no wrecking amendment. So in other words, to put something which may be a bit alternative to some of this, which could be perceived as a wrecking amendment, one would have to move or vote against all of these before putting something else in place. So that's one thing that's going through my head. The other thing is, Chair, I really think when it comes to any vote on these recommendations, we ought to do them one by one, or letter by letter, if you see what I mean, rather than do it all in one lump. So having said that, there's a few questions, and I'll also make a contribution, and then I will be quiet. What I just wonder, Chair, is how have we got here again? How have we got here again? I do feel like I'm in no man's land or no person's land. I've got one warring faction over there and I've got one warring faction over there. Nobody wants to hear what the other side have got to say at all. And all I am having is hand grenades being thrown into the middle. And here we are in the moment trying to dodge these hand grenades. That's how I feel. That's how I feel about all of this. And I understand the emotion, and I'm going to get a little bit. Do you know what? Many of us haven't put ourselves in the front of these roles to be metaphorically shouted at meetings like this, or indeed by email. We haven't done it for those reasons. Now, I don't crave people to respect me, but respect the position I hold and what I'm trying to do. That's all I ask for you. You may not like what I have to say, but I'm going to say it because I've been elected. My role here is as one of 4 Exeter City Council members. So I take the remit for Exeter across the way. And Councillor Davies, I think that was quite rich what you said, and I know you've got no right of reply. Quite rich to tell me to start taking a bold decision. But let me tell them and the Devon County Council, be bold, take control of Exeter City buses, take control, consult the residents, actually talk about timetables, talk about proper engagement, and let's have a decent bus service in Exeter, because that is the 6 that we need to throw in this board game before we start moving around the board. We cannot do things after the event. And that's what I feel we are doing all the time, catching up. How do we get here? So it was 7 to 7. And I put my hand up because people have come to see me, by the way. People have come to see me on both sides of this particular discussion. And I'd like to think I have listened to all sides. And I have articulated on each and every occasion that there must be some common ground. Exeter is a historic city. It's a compact city. We need to live together. And one of the messages, Chair, that I've been saying is car users, cyclists, pedestrians, everybody needs to live and work together. There can be no one winner in any of this in our city. I feel strongly about that. I have to live with other modal uses. We all have to live together. I mean, we're in this situation, and I just wonder, once again, whether or not we're back to where we were 2 meetings ago, Chair, of, I wouldn't say throwing this out, that would be the wrong phrase. Let's have a bit of reflection. Let's go back. We've heard a lot of concerns about people in Hevertree, and I get it. It is great for people living on the eastern corridor outside of our city. It is fantastic that we've got places like new towns like Cranbrook and maybe another one and coming in. But, you know, yeah, it's great coming to Exeter, but they're actually using Hevertree as that route in. I can't understand why somebody, I'm not a traffic management expert, although I've spent a lot of time driving around Exeter in a bus, by the way, and you knew I was going to mention that at some stage. But, you know, why not have one of the main thoroughfares into Exeter as the sole route with cars for buses coming in and out, instead to have piecemeal in each route? I don't know. It just came to me earlier on. You know, why don't buses all go through, and they could from that direction in through Pinhole, not Pinhole, sorry, in through that corridor through Whipton and leave Hevertree alone, although that would give a bit of a problem. And Councillor Pole spoke about, no, I wasn't around in historic towns, all right, before anybody suggests it. I've been around a while, but there used to be an old bus service called the A&F to Hill Barton through Whipton and Hevertree. I was a bus conductor, I drove it. We used to go through Hevertree all up around and back through Whipton and vice versa. But that is why we need to take control of the buses and some things, because we need the voice of Exeter people to be heard loud and clear. I really do believe that. There's some issues brought up with the questions, Chair, about signage, which is quite clearly an Exeter City Council issue. And here on behalf of Exeter City Council, I've listened and I'll take that away, but it's not a matter for this committee. I feel it's quite compelling about the loading bays and everything in North Street, and I wonder why we're doing that. I just wonder why we're doing that. But I do feel, Chair, that this compromise, and that's what it is, a compromise. What a compromise does, it means both sides leave unhappy, right? That's what a compromise always does. Both sides leave unhappy, and both sides will be leaving unhappy here this morning. There'll be those people who feel buses should go through, and I do, and those people who are against cars, against all of that, and just feel that that's impacting on the climate, they will feel that this is the wrong decision. Traders and people in Exeter, in Hevertree rather, will also feel it's not the best decision for us. So I put my hands my head in my hands and think, well, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this to ourselves again, Chair? Again. Now, just tell me, you can maybe answer me. I mean, I've been back on the City Council since 2011. I've not been on this committee for over 13 years. Don't tell me it was like this for 13 years, was it? I don't believe it was. So you've got to say to yourself, what's gone wrong? Once again, it's like we're being told after, and I'm going to make an example here. The City Council are bringing forward, and it is relevant, Chair, some proposals in the Newtown area, St Leonard's area, Newtown area, with not quite extent as this, but what are we doing? We're talking to residents, we're talking to all the councillors, we're briefing the councillors. Actually, we briefed them after the last meeting. I've had no briefing at all as a member of this committee, nothing whatsoever other than these papers landing on my desk 7 days before. I had people coming into my office talking to me. I hadn't seen it. They were giving me stuff. And I'm thinking, where as a councillor am I being briefed? So it's top down, Chair. It's got to stop. This is, and that we cannot go on making decisions like this. I'm sorry. I know this is how the county works. I don't think it's working very well for me to be in a representative. I'm taking all the stick and all the flack for stuff I've never even bought here. Nobody's asked me as a council, what do you think? What do you think as a group? What do you think? Have a bit of input, get some out, and then talk to the residents. It's not happened. So, Chair, at the moment, I can be persuaded through, I'm about to finish, I can be persuaded through discussion, okay, if somebody can give me a hope on all those things, that I really think we need to, and I'd much rather return to and have some dialogue to make sure that we do seek better bus improvements in these corridors, but I don't think this is the way at the moment. So before I start getting lots of emails about other things, it's not about I'm against that at all, on the contrary. And one last remark, which is on page 4 of our papers, about cameras and moving and offences. Why are we doing that? All right, get the powers by all means. Does this, and this is a question for you, if this goes through, is this committee authorising you to do this in Hevertree, or is it something the executive or somewhere else is going to do? Because if you want to start catching people, put your cameras in Exeter High Street, catch the cars going up and down there, catch the Deliveroo bicycles going at 30 miles an hour, nearly killing people. That's where you want to do it. Think about where you're doing it. And don't try to crack nuts with sledgehammers. It is just creating more problems. And I go back at the start, where we're on both sides of this war. And that's where I feel I am. So I hope I've made my feelings a little bit clear on all of this. I think there is a better way, and I'd like to hear from the officers and some of the other members if indeed there is a better way that we could just put pause on this, think it all through. You yourself, Chair, wanted to see some views. I mean, where was, you know, we need to, I mean, we're having to deal with it. This is not the way we make good decisions. Thank you, Chair.
Hannah, do you want to?
Yeah, I'm happy to respond to that. Thank you, Chair. So just reiterating that the decision that we're asking the committee to make today is explicitly relating to the traffic regulation orders. This is a scheme which has been around for quite a while that we've been working on. The Exeter transport strategy, which has been in place for a good number of years now, was brought to this committee. It explicitly references bus improvements on both Hevertree Road and Pinot Road corridors. As does the bus service improvement plan, which has been in place for again a number of years, and that's been approved by our cabinet at Devon County Council. Our transport capital programme was approved by cabinet last month. That explicitly allocates funding towards the delivery of these capital schemes. So this has gone through a really lengthy process. We've also held a public consultation in February and March this year, as well as a statutory TRO consultation, which was September and October. We've taken on board the feedback that we've received at both of those, which we've set out. Following the public consultation, we went back to Cabinet in July. So this scheme received Cabinet approval in July. We are now seeking this committee to give us the approval for the traffic regulation orders in order to deliver that scheme. It's also worth noting that we have had briefings with the HATOC members for this scheme. We've held a couple. They were held last year in advance of the public consultation going live, as well as a specific briefing covering the intelligent corridor proposals. So we have tried to engage with both this committee and the public at a number of different points before this report has landed for this committee today.
Sorry, Jamie, just before you come in, I wonder if part of the problem for Councillor Bialik and the Exeter City councillors is that this bus service improvement plan is a big Devon-wide initiative, which has been through a lot of processes because it covers all areas of Devon. This is one tiny bit of that bus service improvement plan. But in order to implement that overall plan, the traffic regulation orders, which would bring it into being, have to go through the individual HATOCs, so have come to this committee. The individual bits that are covered by this TRO, in a sense, are not locally driven or local initiatives. They are part of a big county-wide initiative. So that is the bit that has been through all the consultation, all the processes.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I mean, I hear everything you've been saying as to why we're here, and I guess, you know, we've got an Exeter transport strategy that talks about attractive bus corridors. That's the ambition. You know, it's not working at the moment. You know, those corridors are constrained. Those buses are being held up. People are being disadvantaged. We've heard lots of that today. I think the message was we need to be ambitious. We need to raise that bar. If we're serious about decarbonisation, then absolutely we need to get public transport working more effectively, more reliably. And that's the challenge that we've been set as officers. So we did go bold. We went 12-hour bus lanes on Hereditary Road. That's bold. Yeah, I totally get that. You know, I think before it was even 24 hours. You know, clearly that was, we pared back from that. But 12 hours we felt was bold. We've heard passionate voices in the crowd today, businesses, local residents in Hereditary speaking clearly this is going to make things more difficult. We've also heard some really good suggestions about, you know, improving the signage to the Gordon's Place car park off Hereditary. That's a really simple thing to do. I drive on that corridor. I've never ever known there was a car park behind there, and I've been Exeter resident for I don't know how many years, many years. You know, there's simple things that we can do to actually highlight the presence of parking. You can come to Hereditary, park, and go and use the businesses there. And we can help do that through this scheme. I think that the changes that have gone back to that 10 to 4 loading, and to be absolutely clear what that means, is this is 10 to 4. That's when you can load do your loading, but it's also when you can park and use that bus lane. So that's all we're doing here. We're changing it from 1 hour in the peak to 3 hours in the morning peak. So we're going to 7 to 10 p.m. And as Hannah mentioned earlier, the operating hours of some of those businesses, that should be a fairly small impact. In the evening peak, at the minute, it's something like, is it 2.5 hours in the evening? And we're changing it to 3 hours. So actually, I think we have listened, and we are coming back with proposals that try to find that balance between the very passionate views of the community, but also hearing the voices of people travelling in, trying to get into Exeter, frustrated at the reliability or lack of reliability. And that's absolutely critical. Unless we're going to get people to think differently about using the bus, we need to get them getting in more smoothly on those corridors. At the minute, that not knowing when one's coming, and this is a great corridor, there's look, there's a good level of service on that, and if we can get that working better, that's a great foundation for them building, getting that mode shift and hopefully relieving congestion on that corridor as well. So that's why we are where we are, and that's why you've got the answers in front of you, and why we're proposing those what we think are reasonable amendments to the traffic orders. That's all we're asking. And as James explained on North Street, yes, the loading is the key issue, but the single yellow lines you can already load. There's lots of space on North Street at the moment, and we do think the benefits of that two-lane approach is going to have benefits not just for buses turning right out of North Street, but also residents getting out of that route in their cars as well. So I just wanted to try and reiterate that strategic direction we're trying to get in, and how we've got to the position we are now, and the recommendations before you today.
Thank you. Councillor Apes.
Thank you. It's good to hear one or two of the things that you've mentioned that have been brought up by residents today. Can I just add a few more, and whether you can come back to those, and then I have also specific questions. So first of all, as well as the signage for Cornets Place, there was a request as to whether if there are hours between 10 and 4 when people can use a laundrette and people can use other shops and so forth, and if they're needing to bring in heavy loads, there was a request towards looking at perhaps a short period of free parking in Gordon's Place before they pay for the full £2 and then upwards from there, and whether that can be addressed. But I have a feeling it might be City Council that runs that car park, so that's a request if that could be looked at, please. I also would like, often people are always talking about Stagecoach, so in a response, can you give us a list of all the different bus companies that do actually come into Exeter? We have a lot of different bus companies, and I support Phil Bialik's talk about the fact that we now need to take control of the buses, and that is really important. And I think our Conservative cabinet do need to look at that and make sure that we have better control of that. And can you also, when you went for the BSIP money, the bus improvement plan, we also, as councillors, added in all sorts of things which were then not funded, such as ticketing, making it cheaper for people to use buses, making some of the changes that is going to make the bus system more reliable. And now that we've got a new government in place, I'm hoping that some of those things will happen. And what I would encourage people that have come today to do is that they write to their MPs, and they write to their MP if they're local, because I know that Steve Race is working on improving accessibility, because I've been bringing it up for years, for instance, at Poleslow station and other train stations in the city within my division and beyond that, because I know that's also gone down, I think, down in Exwick as well. So my questions: number one, why are we going for 4 till 7 rather than 3 to 6? Just asking in the afternoon. Is that because it's a Devon-wide decision by the cabinet that all bus lanes have to be 4 to 7 if they're in the afternoon? The reason I ask that is that bus lanes can also be used by other users, and I understand that those that want to use bikes, and from the data that I got in an email from a resident and from the Heavy traders, gave a lot of detail about when users use 4th Street and Heavy Road, and it's very important to note that there are actually quite a lot of cyclists using 4th Street. And I just wondered, if they're picking their children up from school and so forth, why is it from 4 o'clock and not 3 o'clock? And as was put forward by Councillor Hannaford, there's a lot of families take their children to and from school by bus. And that's actually really important to consider as well. Next question. I still am not certain about the loading bays. Are they staying where they are? And what's the impact on the blue badge holders, which was brought up earlier? Where are they going to be able to park in order to do washing, visit local shops, go to the post office and so forth? I think I've covered most things. One last, sorry, two more. Heavy Tree Road and the residents parking. Has it been considered? It was put forward by those in Heavy Tree Road within your division. Heavy Tree Road at this point is a dividing line between Councillor Whitton's division and my division, Sue Aves, and on the extra parking you're suggesting that they can use is within my division. The request has been, is it possible to put in an extra pedestrian crossing for them to be able to access Grendon Road? Because otherwise got to walk all the way up to Livery Dole, back with their children, with their luggage and everything else, and round to Grendon Road. So a question there, whether that is possible, because I don't know what the answer to that is. I suspect I know, but I want to ask for certain whether you've looked at that. Finally, thank you to all the people that came to speak today. I know we were asked a question whether we'd gone along and knocked on all the doors and spoken to everybody. All of the councillors in the room have their own divisions and their own areas, and ideally we should have come and perhaps knocked on all the doors. We have a certain number of hours, we have an awful lot of meetings, and we do have to deal with all of the residents within our divisions as well. And it is quite a workload. The fact that you've come along today and the emails that have been sent mean that we have heard from a lot of people, and that has been really helpful. So thank you for that. I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. I think James is going to answer a few of your questions, Councillor Aves. But with regards to the extra crossing and accessing the parking, happy to discuss this offline. We think there are some constraints which would prohibit a crossing being able to be installed in that location, but we'll get the information and we'll discuss that with you offline if that's okay.
Yeah, in terms of the loading options, obviously the proposal is to amend what was advertised so that loading would be prohibited between 7 and 10 and 4 till 7 along the whole corridor. So loading would be permitted along the entire corridor, including within the bus lane between those times. Obviously blue badge holders would equally be able to park between those times. The limited waiting and the loading bay outside the laundrette would be again operational between those times, 10 till 4. Obviously the report does include the option to investigate and carry out further sort of smaller consultation on a possibility of moving that loading bay slightly further down the hill, which would allow a bit more traffic to sort of queue to turn right into Tesco, with traffic to be able to bypass it to the left going uphill. So that's another option about the loading there, but the intention would be that the loading bay would still exist. It might just be a little bit further down the hill, subject to this sort of further smaller consultation on that particular modification to the proposals.
Sorry, could you just clarify which loading bay that is?
So the loading bay outside the laundrette. The loading bay outside the laundrette, opposite the Tesco's there. So essentially the intention is that the loading and the parking would remain operational between the hours of 10 till 4, as it does at the moment between 9:30 and 4, I think, isn't it? In terms of the decision to start it at 4 p.m. rather than 3 p.m, that's tied in with the legislation. Legally, we can propose what we like as a council, but if we get objections to certain proposals, which include prohibiting loading during the middle of the day, we as a council, if we get objection, we would be required to hold a public inquiry if we wanted to proceed with anything that would ban loading between 10 and 4 p.m. Obviously, given the timescales with the BSIP funding and the funding and the resourcing to carry out public inquiry, we could not proceed with that proposal, and that's why we're having to relax it back to start at 4 p.m. until 7 p.m. and obviously 7 till 10 in the morning. I said, don't get me wrong, I think ideally I recognise that the desire for school and would happily go a bit earlier. We have these same problems outside schools with other loading restrictions, but unfortunately the legislation, the national legislation sort of restricts what we can do.
Can I just add to that as well? Obviously bringing it to 3 p.m. would also impact a further hour on operational times for businesses in Heathertree. So you'd be taking out another hour of time when businesses are open. So actually that was part of the decision making.
Thank you. Councillor Price, you're next.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, whoever's in control of the slides, there was a slide right at the beginning with certain facts in little circles. It's not in the report, but I was looking at it. I'll take your word for it. Can you find it? Thank you. Anyway, while we're looking, I did a site visit on Friday morning. I stood outside the air ambulance charity shop, and the reason the staff came out is because I had a tape measure. I was checking on, I don't think it was that one. Oh, okay. It's not got the information. I thought I saw a different one. Anyway, I said I was a councillor from this committee. That went down like a lead balloon, and I had a discussion with her about various things. And one of the reasons I told her I was measuring the width of the bus lane is because I am a cyclist. And Councillor Hannaford has got 2 photographs taken on Saturday morning, that's the day after, inbound on the bus lane. And the lower bus lane, that's from basically the gun shop down towards Butts Road. The cycle path is on the outside of the bus lane. The bus lane is 2 meters wide, and the cycle path is way below what it should be. In fact, you'd be a lunatic to go in it because there's 28,000 vehicles use that corridor every day. The previous manager and director of Stagecoach did tell us at such a meeting here, he need never timetable for the Heathertree corridor because of the sheer volume of traffic. And I sometimes think every effort we make to try and improve the bus flows would be great. But look, I've been to Amsterdam, and before I got off the boat, go down the gangplank, there's a person there says, mind the cycle path and mind the bus lane. They're very lucky. They've got all the land in the world to make it all happen. I'm so envious. So, and from the gun shop up, there is no cycle path beside the bus lane. The bus lane is 2 meters wide. Why am I saying all this? Well, back in March 2011, I received anonymously a bundle of documents from this authority, unredacted, between this authority and the Secretary of State regarding our application to have bus lanes in various parts of the city. And some of the replies were fascinating because it says, even though they couldn't read the detail, so it's like page 13 in our report, I don't understand the map at all, there's so little detail. It said, we noticed that the bus lanes in the Everett corridor are 2.5 meters wide. It then says they should be 3 meters wide, but really 4 meters to accommodate a bicycle. It says keeping buses moving recommends them a minimum width of 3 meters for bus lanes with a preferred minimum of 4 meters. There are safety implications for cyclists from the amount of traffic in that corridor. I'm not making this up. This was dated 23rd of March 2005 to us as the Highways Authority. Look, can Devon confirm the width of that lane? I don't think we ever replied. So if you want to think about any of this, while I'm stood there, the lady said, what are you doing about the advert that says you're doing any loading on that side of the road all the way down? And she said, a lot of them places don't have back entrances. I think some of our speakers might have said this. which of course I wouldn't have known if I'd not appeared there because it's not in the report. And I thought, well, I must get out of the advert, and here is the advert. It clearly says what we intend to propose for no load in that side of the road for a very long time, 7 till 7. Coming back to this side, I know we've amended it, we've reduced the hours of the proposal, but one of the things you're required to do in the Act, which I've had to live as a copper all my serving career, is this piece of legislation is still kicking around after 40 years. It's very good to the Highways Authority and very good to members of the public who want to make a contribution. It says one of the things we have to do is give a statement of reasons why we're proposing this. That's what it says. We must give the statement of reasons, a reason why we're doing it. And it says, so the legal department have wrote this, is to accommodate up to 30 buses an hour in each direction between Monday and Saturday. Again, Councillor Handerford's photographs. It's a shame we didn't all have copies before, they're in colour. But at 8:30 Saturday morning inbound, there's only one car in the bus lane and one single decker. And 9:30, an hour later, 2 cars in the bus lane and a double decker. And I'm thinking, what is the issue? Because if you stand outside the gun shop and look down towards Butts Road, you think this bus lane, which has been kicking around for so long, and there's a wrong width, not capable of enforcement. We can't, if we could increase the bus lane all the way through East Wantford Hill, back on it road and inbound, it would be great, but we're never happen. And you think it's the case that bus drivers, because I asked the previous director of Stagecoach, bus drivers are just put up with it because that's the way it is in this city. So I thank all the people who did surveys about the sheer volume of empty buses on that route, and the person who actually again put through my door, they did a survey of the speeds of all the buses. So if it's 28,000 vehicles a day on that corridor, the speed of a bus or any vehicle is not going to be that great. So it's a bit of a shame that we've chosen a piece of the highway where whatever we do, we're never going to achieve anything that would benefit the public, the shops. I did go in the post office because I wanted to see how busy it was on Friday. I thank the post office postmistress, as she said, for what really was a summing up contribution to this debate, because most of them places don't have back entrances. So if we were to vote for 7 to 7 on that side of the road, well, we'd be crippling them. But look, a site visit with a tape measure, you learn a lot. And whoever slipped all this paperwork in my door back in 2011, thank you very much, because the width of most of our bus lanes are not the correct width, because it's pointless putting up a sign saying includes bicycles. You ever watched a bicycle and a bus competing for such little bit limited space? It's just not on. Look, I've said enough, but I think whatever this, as far as I'm concerned, this should all be kicked a touch and started again with a good advert and more consultation with the councillors of this committee, as my colleague councillor by Alex said, from the City Council. Because look, the City Council and the County Council have a combined transport plan. Oh, yeah, we have to speak with the officers regularly, not oddly. I've said enough, but thank you.
Any response to that?
I don't.
Do we just move?
I don't think there was any questions about the TRE.
Here,
I can
James has got one.
I can feed back some comments, Chair, and to Councillor Prowse. Obviously, Councillor Prowse, I thought you'd recognise a parking bay, and that I think is where you're getting confused with the lining on Heathertree 4th Street. The 2 metre width is the width of the parking bay, not a secondary cycle lane. It is just the bus lane and a parking bay. There is no cycle lane along Heathertree 4th Street, which is why there's no parking bays on the north side of the road.
Friday, it should never be there. It's so confusing. James, it's coming around to you. Thanks.
I think, as I said, Councillor Prowse, obviously it's the parking bay for the limited waiting and the loading bay and the bus lane. The two markings are obviously co-located along that length of road. There is no indication or no intention that it would be a segregated cycle lane or separate cycle lane along the route. So I recognise that that might be perceived by yourself and possibly some others, but that's not what is intended by the road markings that are on the highway there. Regarding the statement of reasons, I should point out it does say the central bus corridor accommodates up to 30 buses an hour in each direction. And for clarity, there are 4 paragraphs of statement of reasons within the advert, not just as simple as Councillor Prowse indicated. I just thought it was helpful to clarify that for members' benefit. Okay.
Councillor Prowse, I use that section to park frequently to access the shops in Hevertree. I am a frequent user and I absolutely endorse what James Bench has just said, that although there are 2 lines of markings, it is not actually a cycle path. And the useful aspect of those double markings is that I always know when I open my door that I am not going to be, there is plenty of room for me to open my door when I've parked and not to have conflict with the traffic moving up in the other lane. Next on my list, I have Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. There's quite a lot of discussion has passed by since Councillor Bialik identified that we, under recommendation 1D, were asked to approve quite a spread of proposals, 8 in total, at varying levels of controversy. Obviously, we know which ones are the most controversial, but it does seem that it would be worth putting through each one in turn, rather than suffering what may be results on difficult decisions to throw out all in one go. So I'm supporting Councillor Bialik's request that we actually look at each of these proposals in turn rather than en bloc. So that's my first recognition. Now, I don't know whether that has to come through you, Chair, or what the process is, but it seems advisable that we look at them in turn because some are quite comfortably accommodated by the areas impacted, others not so much so. And the speakers that have spoken this morning predominantly aren't talking about, or are talking about 1 or 2, not all 8. The other thing I would say is sit on a lot of different meetings, and this is probably the most controversial and conflicting that I sit on. And I understand why. We know where we want to be, and I think if we could all wave a magic wand and arrive at a place where buses are accommodated, where there's free-flowing buses, where there's less cars, where there's more sustainable active travel, fantastic. We also know where we are, and if you'll excuse the pun, the journey between those 2 things is where it really hurts, where we're looking at what works now, maybe not brilliantly, but it's what works now. It's where we know where we are, and that is where we're asking for change, and it's painful and it's difficult. So finding a compromise in between those where we are and where we want to be, that is what's really, really difficult. We're stuck with 19th century roads trying to meet 21st century demands. It's a rock and a hard place. So I think one of the things I'm faced with at this committee is hearing from residents, hearing from local businesses, the impacts that they will be affected on. And I think it's extremely difficult because I also see where we're trying to go. I can see officers have been set some very brave achievements that they're meant to be delivering on. And I think certainly for me, there's still adjustments to be made. I'm hearing that there's still space for movement. We're in the 12th hour, where we've seen on the slide up there not so long ago, that there's a deadline to this. It has to be delivered within the funding. But so we're into the 12th hour. It's at this meeting again. We're hearing from residents and businesses how it's impacting on them. And we're sat here listening to that, receiving emails, and receiving this pack. Now, for me as a councillor, the training we receive is that when we make a decision at a meeting, it's based primarily upon the papers that are presented in front of us. That's what we're meant to be making our decisions on, supplemented by debate and input at the meeting. So when I look at these papers and listen to the discussion, I'm hearing there are different resources online. There's an impact assessment which was amended based on the adjusted bus lane times. And this is the second time I'm asking for this at this meeting. That is a key piece of information, and the impact assessment is what played such a significant role in the removal of the active streets trial in Hevertree. It's still not attached to this piece of to the papers I receive. Why isn't the impact assessment in the papers on which I am making a decision? There are also mentions of other strategies. Now, I'm not expecting a whack of strategies, but reference to those strategies. If it's relevant to the decision I'm going to have to make today against the feedback I'm receiving from residents and businesses, I need to see it in these papers. Otherwise, I'm making a decision without all the facts available to me. So please, can we have the impact assessments within these papers? It's what I'm used to having at Exeter City Council. So please, can we have those? I know there's some summary involved, but the actual full impact assessment is what plays a major role if this goes to a judicial review. The impact assessment, whether it's flawed or not, is one of the major thrusts and issues within a judicial review. So please, can we have those papers attached? As I say, there are 8 proposals. Only one proposal is specifically named in the recommendations. Otherwise, it's on block. Not entirely comfortable with that. 12th hour decision, not comfortable with that. I understand where we want to be and where we are, and the journey in between is what's really difficult. There have been speakers and references made to individuals with protected characteristics. Again, I'm going into the impact assessment. I need to know that information. It needs to be part of the papers on which I'm making a decision. I think one of the things that's been referenced at various times by both residents, business owners, and also the councillors that were speaking is about the very detailed, granular impact of this. I lived in Hevertree for, I think it was about 8 years. I visited it irregularly since then. And I don't now live there. I don't experience, not a lived in experience for me now. But for the people that have been speaking here, this is very real to them. So I need to listen to them. I'm not seeing the level of detail here that I think I need to see to make an informed decision, which will impact on people's livelihoods, on the free-flowing traffic within our city, which we need to try and achieve somehow. God knows how, because it's a 19th century road with 21st century needs. So I think I'm in a real difficult position. I'd like to look at these in turn. I would like more information, more detailed information, specifically impact assessment in my pack on which I am required to make a decision. And I think I would like to see more of the information. I'm receiving information prior to this meeting, prior to receiving my official briefing, if you like, which is these papers, because as Councillor Bialik says, we don't have briefings from officers on the lead into this. I'm not aware of them. I've not been invited to them that I'm aware of. So this is the official version. That's what I've got. That's what I'm making a decision on. It's not exactly large, but I'm getting a lot of information from external stakeholders, again, residents, business owners, bus companies. I'm receiving information from them, and we are into an adversarial situation. So this is conflicting data. They don't agree. They say something radically different, sometimes based on the same data set. So I'm in a really difficult position, compromise where nobody leaves happy. That's exactly where we're at. And I'm uncomfortable with being put in that position again. I was put in this position with the Active Streets vote, first HATOC I'd ever attended, had to make that decision, learning on the run, really trying to understand the fact that we need to, the things we need to achieve as a city, what we need to achieve with our transport network versus how we get there and the crippling impact it can have on our own residents. I know that it's been said that the major gain for this will be the flow of traffic coming in from East Devon, and it's Exeter residents that could be paying the price for easing that travel in. But those houses are being built, whether or not we improve our bus lanes, that transport demand will be made, and our roads will be made busier. And as a city council, we have no control over what East Devon does or Teignbridge does in terms of clustering its development around our city limits with no benefit to the city, only the impact. I mean, that will happen. We do need to try and find solutions to it. I think I'm uncomfortable where I've ended up here yet again, and I'm listening to residents who have emailed me, and I do recognize the emotion. I recognize the real impact that individuals in this city will be facing commercially and also in terms of their own living space. I recognize that. I recognize where we need to be. I'm really uncomfortable having arrived here, feeling a time frame, feeling it's 12th hour, need to make a decision, which is why I want it to go, the 8 proposals to be broken down and not to be done en masse, because there are some distinctly different demands and controversy with each of those 8. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Just to pick up from that, I wonder if Jamie, you could respond in a second to the point about the impact assessment being routinely included in future papers. Also, I feel as chair, what I'm hearing from my city colleagues over there is that they feel they have not been included and adequately briefed about the bigger bus service improvement plan. I hear that, and perhaps that's something that we can consider going forward. This is in some ways a slightly unusual circumstance where we have a plan that affects the bigger county issues, which we on the county council have been more briefed and kept in the picture about, but because we have this traffic regulation audit process in order to implement that plan, I fully understand what you're saying, that as city councillors you have not been part of that bigger process and feel slightly left-footed, if I can put it, in coming to this committee to look at this particular issue. So perhaps that is something we can consider going forward if we have this circumstance arising again, that we could be more aware of the need for you as decision makers alongside the county councillors, that you could be better informed and briefed about the bigger plan going forward. But Jamie's that point about the impact assessment.
I guess all I can say is the equality section of the report says in progressing this particular scheme, an impact assessment has been prepared, which has been circulated separately to HATOC members, and there's also a link to the website with the impact assessment in the report. I guess just speaking more broadly, I mean, saying I haven't got the information in front of you. I mean, we've had several hundred responses to this. It's gone through our cabinet processes. The principle of the scheme has been approved. This is purely about making a decision on some fairly simple, straightforward traffic regulation orders, which we talked at length. This is primarily, the plans in the report are clear on what's proposed in terms of loading bays, changes to parking. That's set out with plans in the report. Regarding Hereditary 4th Street, this is purely about changing the timings of those restrictions on those on the loading bays. I guess we've heard, we had an hour of people speaking in favour or against earlier. We've got the consultation responses before you, a 25-page report which summarises the comments. So I guess my question back is, there is a lot of information here that I think is adequate to be making a decision on today. So I guess that's all I'd say on that one. There is, I think Damien Jones would like to also add something.
Apologies, I've not got a name badge. My name's Damien Jones. I'm Deputy Director for Transport, Environment and Waste at Devon County Council. So I cover the operational side of the passenger transport element, moving the people about. Just to say, when we set the bus forum up, we set it up so that each HATOC had a representative on that forum, and that was a way of us feeding back what was happening about the bus service improvement plan across the county. If that's not working for this committee, then happy to discuss how we can make that better.
Thank you, Chair. My reference to the impact assessment is not that there isn't a link that I could follow online from my piece of paper to see the impact assessment. It's the fact that as a councillor, I'm used to seeing the impact assessment, which is crucial to decision making in the public environment. I'm used to seeing it in the paper format. I don't have to go out and find it. But I do take your point that the county does do an appropriate impact assessment on proposals it's putting forward, but as one of the decision makers, I'm used to seeing it as part of my pack. That's my observation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wood, at the county, we do like to do as much electronically as possible. And in fact, we're all encouraged at county level to not use paper for our committee meetings at all. Councillor Atkinson.
Yes, and just to add to that, just to make it clear, that impact assessment is in the public domain for everyone. So every person in this room could have clicked on that link, searched on it and seen the full impact assessment. And what we've got in this report is a summary of that impact assessment. And again, it's on that principle of we're here, we've got a climate emergency where the focus of our attention, it's in the public domain. There is also to save on printing, and everyone has got access to that on mod.gov and on the public website. So I've listened to what my colleagues on the City Council have said, and I think it's important here that we've had this discussion, because there seems to be, as Councillor Byerley said, a lot of emotion and sort of, in a sense, disinformation, a bit like misunderstanding or whatever you call it, on the impact assessment, for instance. And having heard what the officers have said, Councillor Byerley, I hope you realise that there has been a lot of thought gone into this. I mean, the public bus service improvement plan went to HATOC. Officers have told me when it went to HATOC, 2022, was it? 2023. And at that time, City Council representatives were on that committee and all voted in favour of the public sector improvement plan. I think Councillor Wood may have been on that committee at that time. I don't know. So the fact that we have 3 representatives of the City Council who were not at that meeting does not mean City Councils were not involved in the discussion and the process and in the setting up of the bus service forum and all of these developments. And also, I hear what Councillor Wood said about all the documents, but this council, and I think both Councillor Byerley, Wright and Wood were members of the executive committee of the City Council who actually endorsed the Exeter local transport plan. So you should be aware of the aspirations in that, which is to reduce carbon and make roads more accessible to all users, as being a key priority, and to include and to improve public transport. So we have that document plus the LC WIT, which all came to this committee, representatives of the City Council here at discussions and pre-meetings, certainly that I was involved with, about all of these aspects at that time. So hopefully, I mean, I don't know why it is you feel that you haven't, or City Council office councillors have not had the opportunity to engage. But, you know, from my perspective, they have had a lot of opportunity to engage with these proposals in this. And I thank the officers here. We've got a range of officers here, and their role is to try and take the heat out of it by providing independent, unemotional advice and feedback to us here. And I think that this report does that. It demonstrates that, as Jamie Holland said, you know, we went big, we consulted, we realised that we weren't going to get consensus. And frankly, I don't think the no option is consensus. It means those who shout the loudest perhaps win. And I think the modest proposals that are here, and I just want to go through them, the modest proposals. So if you go on page 4, we've got Honiton Road inbound, and that's to increase the bus lane by 1 hour from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. And let's talk about loading. The businesses aren't open at that time. So I don't think consumers are not able to, you know, that won't affect them. So what is in effect the outcome of that is but people who might want to use those that service, load or unload, 45 minutes. I mean, seriously, are we trying to encourage people to load and unload at peak periods with people moving in and out of the city? I mean, I would have thought that if we could do something which prevented that from happening, it would make the road safer for everyone. And why would you want to do it when after 10 o'clock, which is only 45 minutes later, you can turn up, unload and load, etc. So, I mean, really, is that going to make a big deal? And we go to Heathertree 4 Street here, and it's improved from half an hour in the morning to 7 o'clock, again, when businesses aren't open. And again, an extra half an hour. So, you know, you have to wait half an hour before you can load and unload. I mean, it's almost just kind of beggars belief from my perspective that people could feel so strongly about half an hour. And again, in the evening, again, when shops are closed, but people are coming in and out of the city from 6:30 to 7. I mean, is it going to make such a big difference to businesses when, in all intents and purposes, they're closed? And we go to Pinhoe Road. We've got 8 o'clock. Is increasing at 8 o'clock, from 8 o'clock to decreasing it to 7 o'clock at the same. And it, you know, when the shops are not open, but people are travelling in and out of the city to get to work, usually, hopefully by public transport. And then so loading is just an extra half an hour, really. I think people can wait an extra half an hour. I think these proposals are so modest. And as I understand it from the officers, people who have a blue badge are exempt anyway. Could you just confirm that, James? Because I thought I heard you say that they can still park.
In terms of blue badge holders, they won't be able to use the bus lane during the bus lane times.
Okay.
So they'll be able to park
okay,
within
so
the
they are
dedicated,
affected as well. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So I hear this and I think these are modest proposals to help the buses, and you've heard from the bus service users representative, you've heard from the blind person that you know how important it is to get buses when you can't see whether they're coming or going and you're waiting there, to get some help buses in some way. And it's a plan, it is, you know, the strategy of the city council and the county council to make people use buses, to help people use buses, to make it easier for people to use buses to get to and from work. So I just think, I just listen and I think, have we just got into this kind of mindset of, you know, we can't change anything, you know, in everything seems to generate a lot of heat. I hear what Councillor Prowse said about cycle lanes. As a cyclist, when the bus lanes are open, it's fantastic, you know. I've never been cut up by a bus, thank God, or a taxi, of course, who can still use the bus lanes at those times as well. And then we come on to Exeter City Council. Exeter City Council responsible for developing the air quality strategy. So it's part of our 2030 remit to try and improve air quality in that Heathertree corridor, that Wanford Road. And we've got a joint responsibility at the County Council and City Council to do that. And one of those ways of doing that is to improve bus use and take out cars. So these modest proposals of a half an hour, was it 45 minutes in Heathertree? I mean, it's so modest. And if that helps us to reduce the air quality, which we've now got to do another, we've now in the process of doing another plan, you know, why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we do that? Because we know that that is the only area of Exeter which has poor air quality. And we are bound as both councils to address that issue. And I think that this is a good compromising in helping our city council colleagues in addressing that issue as well. And I say it's in accordance with the LCWIP, the Exeter Transport Strategy, and the carbon plan for Devon in order to do that. I'm glad it's I think I've got coming up with all my various points, but I mean, I'm wondering, I think Councillor Aves made some very good points here, and I'm wondering if we shouldn't amend this, make an amendment to this proposal to ask Exeter City Council to give 1 hour free parking in their car park, because that would, I think, address all the issues that the traders have had about reducing trade. And if we could make that as a recommendation from this council to the city council to consider that. Obviously, we've got no power over them to do it, and it's their decision if they want to do it. But hopefully that would address the issue. But really, do we want loading and unloading at peak periods when people are coming in and public transport is being needed? I think these are very modest. And the other thing I would ask officers is, obviously, perhaps in a year's time, we could review this, and if the cataclysmic events that have been foretold to us today do come about, we are able to review that, are we not? We can do this in any event. And lastly, but not least, I want to say that we listened to objections to the low traffic neighbourhood at various meetings, and that decision was primarily made on the impact on people with protected characteristics, and those views were passionately held by members of some of the community who were here, and that was in effect one of the main reason for why that was not gone ahead with. And I have listened to those 3 brave speakers, people representing protected characteristics, who spoke today, and this report makes it very clear that people with protected characteristics are the main bus users, the main people affected by this, who make their life easier. And so in one last decision where voting for people with protected characteristics. And this time we're being asked vote against people with protected characteristics and make their life easier. And you know, we want some consistency here. So I say to my colleagues on this, if you vote for this, you're voting for better air quality and to protect people with protected characteristics, make their life easier. And I'd also say to you that these proposals are very modest. The information has been out there for 2 years. It's been through the cabinet here twice. It's been to the City Council. It's been to Hattock several times. That there is enough information in order to make this decision today. And I would urge all my colleagues around this table to do that. And I would ask if there is a seconder, whether City Council will be prepared to second my amendment, that they will go away and consider making discussing whether they can give 1 hour free parking at their car park. Thank you.
Can I have a point of clarification, Chair? It will help. Just to say, because my name was referenced quite a lot here, I do know that the Exeter Executive of the City Council did not, when we approved the bus plan, did not give carte blanche. Off you go, do what you want, when you want, now you want. We never said that at all. And also in the Air Quality Action Plan, item 21 of the issues that was part of our action plans, which does say this. Again, nowhere in there does it say, oh, and by the way, this gives you the right to go off and do whatever you want, when you want, and don't talk to us about it. No, we never said that at all. We want to see it. In actual fact, I understand that representations through the air quality action plans, I certainly know that my friends in other political parties within the Exeter City Council are actually seeking meetings with the County Council to actually discuss on how we implement some of those things and discuss it. So let's just keep it to the issues here. We all want to see that, Chair, and it's very, very important. And of course, that's what I need to say, and my contribution was about proper consultation and get the detail done, not rush into something and then be sorry afterwards. I want to see improvements. And the last thing is, I'll be happy to speak to the amendment in relation to, yet again, Exeter City Council subsidising the Devon County Council's proposals. And of course, we will always be the bigger person, just as when we spent, and forgive me for saying this, when we paid £8 million to put a bus station into the city centre, which was the responsibility of the Devon County Council. But don't worry, we sucked it up, we paid for it. And of course, if it is sensible to do something like that, we will pay brave decisions and suck it up. Thank you.
Right. I would have to say, as chair, I am really disappointed that this discussion and debate is becoming a war between the County Council and the City Council. That is disappointing, and I hope that can be addressed going forward, and that we can show some willingness to work together for the sake of our city. We are all Exeter City Council elected Exeter City members who wish to see the best for us. Just to say that going forward. Now, we have been debating for a long time. I would hope to move to the vote before much longer, but I've got four members who have asked to speak. Can I please ask you to speak as succinctly as possible, because I think we are rapidly running out of the ability to sit and listen for much longer. So I have got Councillor Wright, Councillor Adams, Councillor Wettenhall, and now Councillor Hannaford, who have all asked to speak. Can you please, for the sake of us all, just try and be brief? Thank you. So, Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I will be brief. A lot of what I wanted to say has been covered, and you have just covered what I wanted to say after that last exchange as well, Chair. So thank you for what you said then. This is a committee that we are trying to make informed decisions on behalf of the residents of the city. But it does have a political makeup, and it's a shame when we get dragged down too far into the politics of it, but it does have a bearing sometimes. I will be quick. Number one, and again, this is a bit outside of the actual focus of what's on here today, but because of the whole talks around it, I want to say it. Bus routes into and out of the high street. Every bus route still in the city goes in and out of the city centre. We heard from Councillor Pole earlier on, if you live in Whitton area, you can't get to Hevertree direct on a bus. You have to go into town and out again. All these things don't help with congestion. And what we're talking about here is congestion in the city and trying to alleviate congestion, encourage people to use buses, cut down on emissions. And I just think it really is time to go back to Stagecoach. Again, you have the powers, you've always had the powers to do it anyway. The latest government is now sort of giving a bit of a shove to that and extending powers. But I think real discussion and looking at the bus routes would help to stop so much congestion on these major arterial roads. Point two, just throwing this one out here, everyone's going to hate me for this, but I think sometimes bus lanes actually contribute to the congestion, because where you used to have two rows of traffic in the city, quite happily moving at quite a pace, now you've only got one, because one of them's a bus lane, which I'm sorry, but if you can spot 60 buses an hour going along Hevertree, I want to come and be in your world, because I've never seen that many up and down there. So a lot of the time, even in the bus, I understand the need for bus lanes, of course I do, but just chucking it out there, think outside the box sometimes. Are they actually helping to get congestion down, or are they actually pushing all the cars into one lane and making it worse? The 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. thing, I'm really confused over that, about the legislation as to why we couldn't look at a 3 p.m. I sort of got it and thought, okay, that's the thing we can't do. But then Jamie's comment about you decided not to do it because it would actually cut down on a business, it gave me the idea that you could have done it. You could have looked at it. So I just would say in the future, maybe that's something that we ought to be able to discuss at the committee, because it's something we've had emails about. And that we're concerned about, and Councillor Raves mentioned that. So actually look at the timings around the school pick up and drop up point. So it sort of seems that is like a bit of a political decision that's actually been made by officers instead of coming to us, but we're told it couldn't come to us because there's a legal reason why it couldn't. So a little bit confusing, which leads me to my last point really, is to and this has been covered, but I just want to say it again, to really consider the fact that you do have 4 new city council representatives on here on Hattock. I say new, it's been since May, and our first meeting was the LTN decision one. So any sort of briefings that had gone beforehand, of course the city was represented, but those people that represented have now gone. They're not here anymore. There hasn't been a handover. It would be lovely if every time a councillor didn't get elected into position in May, they had a nice sit down and handover with the person that has got in. But for all sorts of reasons, you can imagine that doesn't happen. So just trying to get a bit of a better process between us as 2 cities, as 2 councils, sorry, and us as 2 lots of elected members, I would really welcome, because it mentions in here about having councillor briefings on all of this. I haven't had that, and neither does anybody else here. And just a really quick last point about cutting down on emissions. Please stop sending me paper copies. I don't actually want them. I would rather have it's nice of you to send them, but I don't need them. If I need to print something out, I'll do it at home. But I would like to have the report and the impact assessment in one attachment to an email, or the link to it all being all there together. Thank you.
Councillor Adams.
Thank you. I'll be as brief as possible.
I echo a lot of what's been said. It's not easy sitting here as a council trying to make the right decisions for everybody, and you are stuck between a rock and a hard place a lot of the time trying to make the right things, and there are a lot of sleepless nights. So whatever people think of the decisions we make, you can be sure we do think long and hard and have to make some really tough decisions. And I thank a member of the public who recognised that. I'm going to speak really about some of the positives, because we haven't really mentioned Pinhoe Road, but I know residents in my division have been very positive about the changes. I've actually had people asking me if we can change the time to 7 o'clock. People who work at the hospital particularly really want a more efficient, quick way to the hospital. So just to put in a positive there for some of the other areas that haven't really been mentioned. I also have to say, after potholes and parking, one of the biggest things that I hear on the doorstep when I'm talking to people, and certainly during the Active Streets trial, the thing that came through most was, please can we have better public transport? That was absolutely clear, and people are crying out for it, for better public transport. So I will echo also what I said about opportunities to take control of our buses, because I know Stagecoach are working hard with us, but actually some of my division, and I'm sure other people's areas, are not being their needs are not being met. And so if you've got a bus once an hour and it stops at 7 o'clock at night, it's really hard to be using buses effectively. The train station in Pinhoe is so oversubscribed. It's a lot of patronage because A, it's cheap and it's quick and it's efficient. And I think it's important to say we need to improve public transport. When we talk about compromise, I understand when we said about compromise being nobody's happy, but my view as a councillor is actually, I think a lot of residents understand compromise. They understand that they can't always have everything they want, that they've got to listen to the other side. There are a lot of people who really understand that. And I think that's a world we've got to live in right now. We have got to compromise, we have got to listen to each other. I think a lot of my residents don't want to live in a polarised world where we don't listen to each other and think about each other's views. So I do have and I do agree with Councillor, having to make a very difficult decision now, and I know that, but I've listened to what everyone said, and I think the changes are modest enough. Difficult, I know, for some people, they seem modest enough to try and make a significant difference to some of the public transport that matters to people in this city. But 3 questions. One, somebody questioned the 4 minutes. It would make an improvement to 4 minutes. Where have you got that information from, that data? Because that seems a significant amount. When people are standing, as a partially sighted lady said, standing at bus stops. I have this story all the time in my inbox. I was waiting for the bus. It was 20 minutes late. I was then late for my medical appointment. We're talking about the most vulnerable people here. This is why I'm more minded to go with the recommendations. We're talking about people, elderly, who's got to get to the hospital, people who've got to get into town, people who've got to do their shopping in my division because they don't have a car. So I have to consider the most vulnerable in all of this. So can I have some clarity on that? Can I also have some information about, there was a lot of discussion around when the Magdalen Road cycle route was put in. How has that impacted businesses? Do we know? Have you got information? There was a lot of worry from traders then about businesses. Do you know the impact of that? And the third thing is, Hannah, you talked about the timescale for this. So the other, it seems to me, is the Heavy Tree Road, 4th Street, that is the difficulty, and loading seems to be the biggest problem. There is parking. It's just how you choose to park, it seems to be, in Heavy Tree, but there is parking, and we could improve that by signage and improvements in times. But it seems loading is the issue, and that's where I'm finding the sticking point really in all this. But those 3 questions are about the timescale for when we need to spend this money. So if a vote goes through that we're delaying Heavy Tree Road, what are the timescales we're talking about? Will we lose that money? Can it come to February Hattock if that is something that is an outcome of this? There's those 3 questions. Thank you.
Thank you. With regards to the 4 minutes, that comes from modelling the package of measures, which includes the technology improvements using traffic modelling software called Linsig. So that's where we've got the 4 minutes from. That's from our traffic modelling. With regards to the impact on Magdalen Road, we are looking at commissioning a case study currently. So no, we don't have the evidence yet, but it's something that we're looking at. And as for the timescales, if we were to delay a decision now and look at alternatives, we wouldn't make the March 2025 deadline. We wouldn't have time to reconsult on anything.
Thank you. I got one last councillor to speak. Before we move to Councillor Wettenhall, can I just say that I have heard what some of the city councillors have suggested about breaking down the way we vote and recommendations on this. I just want to check with officers if we move to a vote after Councillor Wettenhall has spoken to deal separately with the 2 corridors. Would that be, can we take the list of recommendations apart from, I think it would be B, and apply them to the Pinnerhoe corridors separately, and then come back and take a vote on the Hevertree corridor? Can we separate out the vote on the 2 corridors is what I'm after. If that is possible, can officers perhaps just work on that? And if we're able to do that, I have an additional amendment I would like to make to the Hevertree corridor proposals. So perhaps I could just get officers to look into that as a suggestion to move this forward whilst Councillor Wettenhall makes her point.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to try and summarise where I think we are from my perspective. We've got an option as a committee to do nothing. In other words, reject this and do nothing. We would lose the funding. I think more significantly, it is that, you know, it would show that Hattock is at complete odds with DCC's own agreed policies, and in many cases, Exeter City Council's agreed policies. And I can't see that changing then until the elections in May next year. So there's something quite worrying about that, the stuckness of it. That's option A, do nothing. Option B, we vote as is. I would like to propose possibly an amendment, but I think we have had very, very poor information about basic facts, and the fact that councillors are having to ask some key questions, some of which I emailed in, so I knew the answers, but if I hadn't emailed in, I wouldn't have known the answers. The information provided about the realities of the businesses has been very poor. To just know that the post office is not, as Councillor Bennett, one of the Hevertree ward councillors, talked to the post office and found, you know, they're not allowed to have deliveries at more than a certain distance because of their own rules about security. We need to understand who has and hasn't got a back access for delivery, because an email's come into us during this meeting with someone saying the breweries are not telling the truth, they have got rear access. I mean, for goodness sake, these are facts we need to clarify. So I'm wondering if, and I think there's a number of things that could just improve the current recommendations. This is all around Hevertree, 4 Street. One is, you know, the issue of the loading bays. Exactly where could they be? Somebody's proposed, I think someone's proposed it today, there's a parking space in Church Terrace just a few metres back from 4 Street. Could that be an additional loading bay? The Gordon Road car park proposal, which seems such a sensible thing, and I know Exeter Cycling Campaign are really in favour of that as well, is like, could you have, say, free parking for half an hour, and then, you know, that thing. The loading bays on North Street. And also even the co-op, it fascinates me. They've got an enormous car park at the back and it's never busy. You know, could someone go, could we talk to the co-op and say, could you make part of your car park, a paid for car park? It just feels to me there are these things could be investigated and really fact checked with the key businesses that literally cannot deal with this. and then come back with an improved proposal that would still be within the timescale, because the money has to be spent by March 2025. The last option is the radical redesign. It's you say this is so difficult, but it's worth getting right. We will go away, we will radically redesign it with proper engagement, and then it will have to go to public inquiry. And it's been presented to me in an email today that going to public inquiry, this is if there are objections, that the council is forced to go to public inquiry. That's not on the cards, it's impossible. But as somebody else said, is that, you know, it would be good to explore those things more. So I'm minded to propose an amendment where it's going back and just checking some of the other things that could make this proposal as it stands a bit better. Other quick things are that I emailed the issue of ANPR, automatic number plate recognition on the bus lane. I would like it minuted that I would like to suggest the committee get a report back on this very soon, because I've emailed Meg Booth at the end of October asking when will ANPR come in, which committee will make the decisions, and have decisions been made about where the cameras are going, because there's nothing in any of the record to date that says exactly where the cameras are going. So that is a slight sideline, but I really feel this committee needs to be better informed about that, and indeed whether it's in the remit of this committee at all. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say. And I think going back to the theme of how can we get better information, it isn't so much for me that we didn't know about the bus partnership. It's we're not getting good enough quality information. Why weren't we? We need basic facts, like, you know, that if we don't do it here, this is the deadline for the spending. The reason that we can't have the school run time, which so many people would have liked the bus lane to include some of the school run time, is because of this business of going to public inquiry if you get an objection. But we're sitting here, I bet most of the people around this table didn't know that. So I feel like we're just not getting quality, basic information about the background to what we're discussing. And if it's helpful, I'm happy to make a formal amendment that I'm not quite sure, I'm not very good at this bit, but, you know, that we take this as a working idea and go away and just come back with a few tweaks that might make it easier and clearer to councillors exactly what's being proposed, and things like whether Gordon Road can be part of the solution. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wettenhall. Before we do that, were you happy with my earlier suggestion to separate out the two corridors? Because the other corridor does not seem to be causing any controversy, and perhaps we could take a vote on all the proposals in respect of the other corridor and then come back to this one. So officers, is that something that we can do? Can we sort of get that dealt with? The Pinho corridor, which I don't think is causing any controversy.
Chair, I think I've drafted something which Hannah I think is preparing to share on screen to split out the proposals to discuss that considering. In terms of what Councillor Wettenhall's question about the moving traffic enforcement, I can confirm that during this meeting I've received a letter that's been sent to us by the DT that's given us powers. So that has happened this morning. And we are in the process of procuring cameras for that. In terms of the history, just obviously Cabinet, well, it started with scrutiny, considered moving traffic enforcement powers and requested Cabinet, who have subsequently approved that. A number of sites were consulted upon for the first tranche of cameras and first locations. In Exeter, we've got the bus lanes on Topsham Road, 4 Street, Cowick Street. There was also the bus gate on Wanford Road and also one-way Iron Bridge. So that's the sites to be considered, and that'll be the first tranche of cameras that we're rolling out next year. And obviously, depending on requests and other demands, we'll consider future cameras or relocating those cameras to other sites, depending on the restrictions.
I think perhaps as members, we were slightly ahead of you. We'd seen that letter. I saw it yesterday, so it's what I was referring to earlier. Thank you, officers. So before we take any further action on the Hevertree corridor, could I please ask members to take a vote?
Chair, you did acknowledge that I haven't spoken yet in this debate. I had only asked questions. Thank you. That's all right. Thank you, Chair. I think in many ways this does mirror the debate that we've had about Carrick Street previously in terms of wanting to improve the bus infrastructure, the reliability. How does that impact on local businesses and traders? And I have to say, it was said earlier on that the 54-metre bits in Hevitree would significantly improve bus services. I'm sorry, I don't believe that. I use buses every day, many times a day, throughout the day, for various reasons, and the issues are they don't turn up, or as Councillor Adams said, for example, certain services like the F just disappear at 7 o'clock. We don't know where they've gone or what's happened to them, but they are no longer there. I don't know who worked that one out. I mean, if you want an F, you're on a hide into nothing. So it's all of those issues that I think we need to build on. I do actually agree with the bus user group in terms of a radical shift. I agree with the gentleman that spoke about that. But as Councillor Bialik has said, we are in the wrong place. We can't do one without the other. We've got to have reliable, cheap public transport. I won't mention what happened in the budget for diplomatic reasons about the bus fares, but anyway, I don't think that was helpful. But I do think, you know, that is the bigger picture. In the immediate situation we have is about how this will impact on particularly the businesses and traders in Hevitree. I understand that we have policies and procedures. I don't think that the City Council executive can be blamed for approving a broad brush document, because, you know, it's like voting against apple pie and motherhood. Who would vote against better public transport and buses? But this is now going down to the granular level of that. And I think in terms of policies, as the City Council and the County Council, we also have policies about employment and jobs and supporting small businesses and micro businesses and entrepreneurs. It's all there if you want to look at it. So we've heard today some really strong representations from estate agents, the furniture business, the laundrette, food shops, and particularly the post office, but even the pubs as well. And I don't think that we can take a gamble with people's livelihoods and their businesses by saying, oh, if we do this, we'll come back in 6 or 12 months. You know, sorry, chaps, if you've gone out of business, or you've lost another chunk of your profit, or, you know, or you've invested your life savings in that business, I'm sorry about that. It didn't work out, because it's not our necks on the line, is it? It's their livelihoods and their businesses. And it's bigger than that, particularly for places like the post office, you know, essential services that would be completely diminished if we're not careful. And it's these unintended consequences that I really do worry about. I won't be supporting either of these options at the moment. I think, again, we don't know what we're voting for. If we do go along with it to a certain extent, we'll come back and they'll say, oh, well, you supported it again. I mirror all the contributions from everybody about more information, better information, because that is so key. In doing that, I think there's been some good options that have been brought forward. Councillor Wettinghall about exploring the co-op car park, I think, is a good idea. I think the Gordon's Place car park is another thing that we could look at. But at the moment, I'm not prepared to gamble with people's businesses, and I'm not prepared to take away frontline services from local residents. And again, if you're really serious about climate change and emissions, walking to the post office is better than driving to it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Sorry, is it okay if I just respond just as a summing up, because I'm nervous about the decision that could be made today, because, you know, this is just reiterating the primary bus corridor in the city. You know, we just need to be reminded about the number of buses, the number of passengers using this corridor, significant volumes, and I just wanted to I didn't want to make out that we sit here trying to make people's lives a misery. That's not the case. We are desperately trying to make our transport system work, and it's really hard. You know, cycling proposals are controversial. Bus proposals, anything we're trying to do is always going to have challenge, and it's going to be difficult. And I think, you know, listening to the debate, actually it feels like it's been blown up into something far greater than it actually is, because actually the impact of these changes is fairly modest. We have completely changed it back. The loading restrictions on that Hevitree code road through 4th Street are going to have limited impact on those operational times, and customers will still be able to park outside. There's more we can do to advertise local parking areas in the area to try and retain that business. And loading is going to be available through 10 till 4 in the day. That's what happens in the High Street. That's what happens in 4th Street. There's places all over the city where those loading restrictions are in place, and they have rear access, and businesses find a way to manage those loading arrangements. I'm just concerned that if we can't get these bus priority proposals through, it raises concerns about the future ambitions for the transport strategy for the city, and getting people out of their cars, relying on bus services, reliable, frequent, on time, all of those things that we want from buses. We want that. And we know that Exeter's road network, all of those radial corridors are constrained. They are narrow historic city roads. There's very limited options. We've heard about potentially, 2 lanes might be better than 1. There's cars parking in that lane already. So that not being a bus lane doesn't actually make a jot of difference to capacity on that corridor. So I'm just trying to do a final thought, summing up, hearing everything that's been said. And I realise there's been a lot of heat, a lot of red faces around the room. I've got a red face. It's tough decisions. We're dealing with real people's lives, but there's positives and there are negatives. And I'm just hoping that in presenting the paper we have, relaxing some of those restrictions, we've tried to go as far as we possibly can to allow businesses to still have their customers, to still be able to load while still delivering hopefully a much better bus service for the city. So I just wanted to end with those comments before we go to the vote. That's okay.
Thank you. In order to move to the vote, we are going to have a mover and seconder for the revised set of recommendations. Before we do that, I wanted to include a further amendment, but do I need to move that set of recommendations before? Yeah, right. Just to cover the procedures here.
It's on the table.
Okay, no, my very helpful clerk tells me that this is not an amendment. This is just a clarification of the recommendations we moved and seconded earlier. So in that case, can I, before we move to vote, can I put forward an amendment to, I think it would be to E or F, to include a recommendation that further parking opportunities are considered in respect of the City Council car park and other commercial locally adjacent car parks. And there was something else in my head which has gone out of it. Councillor Wetton-Hall.
Was it the loading bay, changing the park? There's one parking bay on Church, I always forget, is it Church Street or Church Road? Anyway, that one, changing it to a loading bay is another option.
And consideration of further loading bay opportunities, which are probably covered by H, but if it could be stated specifically.
Can I suggest a potentially an alternative? Because I think we need to separate out those additional recommendations from the traffic orders, because this is purely about approving the amended traffic regulation orders, which are very specific things. I think if we wanted to have an additional recommendation that says recommends exploring additional loading proposals and or loading locations and parking options in the area. Sorry, that's not very well worded, but that needs to be a standalone separate thing, because that's a separate thing.
I understand. I understand. So as we move through the votes, if members can bear in mind that we will then move on to consider those as separate recommendations about additional parking opportunities and to look at loading bays. So that will follow. Right. Now, am I understanding that members literally want to go through A, B, C, D and vote separately? Right. Okay. So, A, can I have everyone in favour, please? That's just to note the consultation responses.
Chair, I'm confused, if you can help me. So Councillor Wentenall a few moments ago was basically saying that we could still meet the timetable of March. We need to put some of this on hold whilst we get fact check and get all the evidence. So if that is the case, if that is an amendment, that amendment needs to be taken in conjunction with item B, because if you go and agree item B, forget your amendment, Lynn Wentenall, because we've now resolved the matter. So you would have to take that is an amendment that on item B, which is basically saying, which was a little bit similar to what I was going to say earlier on, that we take further discussions and consultations take place and further discuss with solutions and a further report to HATOC, taking in board all of that. And we can still meet that timetable. This is a special HATOC. We can always have another special HATOC. And so doing that, and I'm sort of seconding, if Lynn is saying that, I'm seconding that, that's what we would do. And that would actually give better evidence to, if these are the times that are going to be coming forward, will give better acceptability and evidence to people who would most probably say, okay, I get it now, as opposed to they're feeling that this is being imposed upon people at the moment.
I'm sorry, Councillor Pilot.
Nope.
That was quite a lengthy interjection there. Are you actually suggesting that we do not take any of these proposals at this moment in time?
B is putting the time limits down, which is, so Jamie split it up a few moments ago to the parking, loading orders and all that sort of stuff. And then obviously this regulation about the times would have been a separate decision. We could still do that.
Point of clarification, Chair. I think there might be some confusion because those recommendations up on the screen don't match the recommendations on the paper.
No, just that, Councillor Wood.
That's better.
That is what we just discussed, to separate out the two corridors.
But I think Councillor Bialik was talking about that as B.
No, we are looking at the recommendations. Hannah, can you get back?
12 hours up.
Page 7.
So, Chair, shall I just clarify what I've done? So these are the recommendations that are in the report on the screen currently. Following the discussion of the members, we've just added an additional slide, which is this one, which splits out the recommendation, which on the original slide said approve the making and sealing of traffic orders. All we've done is put that at the top of the recommendations and split it out by the 4 different sections. So Pinnow Road, Honiton Road, Hevertree Road, 4th Street, Hevertree. It then follows with the other recommendations which were earlier in the previous one. So we've just clarified it. They're in a slightly different order, but they're split out.
I just get clarification. When we're talking about the extra recommendation we're putting in, that's looking at loading, but not necessarily on the 4th Street and Hevertree, but elsewhere. Is that what we're talking about? Obviously, parking's elsewhere.
I think we suggested maybe to have a recommendation to consider alternative parking and loading locations in addition in the local area.
That's not up there because that's an additional recommendation. These are the same recommendations as are in the report, but simply split out to make it clearer.
Yeah, and that's good. But Councillor Wentenall was basically saying in relation to F, not to do F at this moment in time because you wanted it to be further fact checked and we would come back and then decide upon F based upon that information we collated. That's what I thought you were saying.
We just put that.
And that's what I would, and that's what I'm seconding, Chair.
Yeah, that is why, Councillor Bialik, that is why we are voting on each one separately. So,
Sorry, but very quickly, can we get, if we need to, and I know we're all tired and whatever, but can we get an emergency HATOC in time if E and F are rejected so that it can be improved?
Yeah, from an officer point of view, this is why we've got the special meeting now, to enable us to have enough time following the recommendations to actually implement what we're asking for approval for. I think we'd be really struggling to get another special meeting in. I'm guessing it would probably have to be January. The next meeting's February, isn't it? Yeah, we're going to really struggle to get it in and delivered by March. I'd also be really concerned about what additional information we're going to use in order to make those recommendations. We've used a huge amount of information to come to these recommendations. Currently, we've been working on the BSIP for 2 years. We're using lots of data from Stagecoach. We're using traffic data. We've obviously got the outcomes of 2 separate consultations, which is the public consultation and the TRO consultation. So I'm struggling to understand what information we would use in that short timescale to change.
sorry, members, can we please proceed to vote on A, B and C? And let's clear those off the table before we deal with these issues. So could I ask members to vote A, B and C? Will you support those parts of the recommendations at this stage? Could I have a vote, please? A, B and C, thank you.
Recommendation D relates to the liveried owl section. So that's not the 4th Street Heavitree one, which is recommendation E.
Chair, can I vote against A, B and C, please?
Okay, so we've got 1 vote against and everyone else voted for. So A, B and C we've dealt with. D is the section of Heavitree Road going from the Waitrose up to Barrack Road. Could I please have a vote as to whether that part is acceptable to members? If members are prepared to vote on that, please. Thank you. And can I record an abstention, please? So that's A, B, C and D. E is for the section of Heavitree which goes, I think, with F, which is the proposal to expand the operation of the bus lane, but to the reduced hours from the original proposal. And we have an amendment to that on the table proposed from Councillor Wetnall, seconded by.
I'm going to have to, in view of what the officer said about the time constraints, I don't feel I can second that.
Okay, so there was a proposal from Councillor Wetnall to delay a decision on that aspect to allow it to come back to a further special meeting. Do I have a seconder for that amendment, please? No. Okay, so we go back to
Further amendment on F, Chair.
Pardon?
I'd like to move an amendment to F on the times.
Okay.
I would like to delete Saturday and insert Friday in both of those lines, so it doesn't apply on a Saturday, and to add further monitoring to take place for Saturday and to be brought back to this committee at a later stage.
We have a seconder for that. Can I have vote then on the
That would be.
Sorry, I thought we were dealing with E and F together because they're all relating to that bus lane.
And I'm all, and to both items, where you see Saturday, insert Friday.
Okay, so
not take a further evidence to come back.
So Councillor Barlick proposed an amendment which has been seconded, that the amended times Monday to Friday and not Saturday, but that we monitor and possibly come back with the Saturday option at a later date. Can I have a vote on that as an amendment, please?
Where they're proposing to have no loading on the other side from 7 to 7 Monday to Saturday, because I can't see where that is there. Yeah, but the opposite side of the road to the bus line, Phil. Is that where is that later or in there somewhere?
I think for Councillor Prowse's benefit and from my understanding, the proposals, as always, the no loading along the whole Coventry corridor was originally proposed Monday to Saturday, 7 till 7. The proposal under what was in the report was to relax the bus lane and the corresponding no loading along the whole corridor to be the morning and evening peaks Monday to Saturday. I think under Councillor Bialik's proposal, it's the same sort of timings, but just be Monday to Friday along the corridor. I think that's just Forestry Coventry, yeah.
Okay, members, can I please have a vote then to accept the amendments? So becomes Monday to Friday only, but the extended hours that was proposed. Can we have a vote? Members in favour, please. Monday to Friday. Any votes against? Abstentions? Abstention. Now, just from the point of procedure, so we've accepted that as a amendment that becomes the substantive motion. So we now need to vote on it again. Do we accept it now that it is the substantive motion? Right. Oh, sorry, hand still up, please. Votes against? 2 against. Okay, we're nearly there. G, and let's take the vote on G. So that is just about the movements of the loading bay being explored. It's not a definite decision. is just opening the door to looking at that possibility, which I think officers were explained it would help with the vehicles turning right into Tesco and such like. So we're happy, please members, could members vote in those in favour? Any votes against? Yeah, votes against, abstentions, 2 abstentions. Right, finally, H, which is the usual recommendation we have in these kind of things that we pass, to minor changes to be subject to consultation with the chair and local councillors. Can we just approve that one, please? Thank you. Against? 1 against. Abstention? 1 abstention. Right, that concludes yeah, that concludes the voting on that list of recommendations. We now need to come back to the further recommendation that was proposed, which is not directly connected to the TRO, which was to recommend that the consideration is given to alternative parking. And just to clarify, we discussed that could be the City Council's car park or commercial parking, or any other areas that come to mind. So the recommendation to give consideration.
Chair, is it within the capacity of this committee to pass such a motion? Because as I've given an undertaking to take it back, because I would want to, as leader, explore a discussion with the leader of the county council that when he gets all these cameras up and he's making loads of money, that perhaps he could compensate the city council for doing this. But that's a discussion I need to have with him.
Councillor Bialik, it is only a recommendation to ask. We, as this committee, we're well aware we cannot require. So it is simply a polite request to the City Council to look at it. Does that clarify? Sorry to go back to the wording. Recommendation, the consideration is given to alternative parking opportunities in the area, and to recommendation, the consideration is given to alternative parking and loading locations in the local area. Okay, was that clear? Do I need to repeat it again?
I'm very sorry, Chair. Please could you repeat it? My brain's stuck.
Recommendation, the consideration is given to alternative parking and loading locations in the local area.
Yeah. And how will councillors hear? I mean, will that be reported back, or is it just is that under the delegated powers, basically? If the co-op say yes, we're really interested, is that?
We can ask for a report back at a update at a future meeting. Okay. And the officers report back at a future meeting. Can I have all in favour, please? Any against? Abstentions? 2 abstentions. Right. Are we actually at the end of the agenda? Right, members, that does take us to the end of